Chapter 1285. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Amidst the tearing sound of the wind, the treasures that belonged to the famous godhead weapons in this world flashed across the space like lightning and shot toward Arjur like raindrops. Chirp 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 chirp. Arjur let out a shrill cry that sounded like he had gone mad. He kept swinging his huge palms that were as rough as a bear's paw at the treasures that were shooting toward him. Clang 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 clang. Amidst the clanging sound of steel, the treasures that were shooting toward him like lightning were smashed away by Arjur's huge palms. Even so, many treasures still managed to penetrate Arjur's defense and landed on his body. Poochie! 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 Amidst the tearing sounds, the sharpest treasures pierced through Arjur's body one by one. Green blood that resembled venom flowed out of Arjur's body as he screamed in agony. Not long after, the astral elves, who was one of the strongest astral elves in the box court, were pierced by the astral elves. Not only were his body riddled with holes, but he was also pierced full of weapons. Under such circumstances, the mana surging from Noah's body, which was filled with golden ripples, became more and more intense. The glint in his deep, pitch-black eyes became brighter and brighter. He raised one of his hands, and one after another, precious artifacts emerged from the golden ripples one after another. They turned into flashes of light that shot toward Arjur's direction. It was a scene that was like a reenactment of a myth. On one side was a human who possessed all the legendary treasures from ancient times. On the other side was one of the most powerful species that was born in a stellar-level planet. It was as if the two of them were trying to write a new myth. They were trying their best to sing the praises of the legendary power. The entire night sky seemed to have become the background of the battle stage. Every star in the sky bloomed with unprecedented brilliance. Once upon a time, in the world of Type Moon, during the Holy Grail War, the hero King Gilgamesh, who appeared in the form of a servant, and the great hero Hercules had written an identical myth. The difference was that Noah had more treasures than hero King Gilgamesh, who claimed to have all the treasures of an era. Arjur, on the other hand, did not have 12 lives like Hercules. Even so, the legendary weapons that pierced through Arjur's body did not slow down the movements of the Celestial, who was one of the strongest species. Even if his entire body was filled with treasures. Even if his body was riddled with holes. Even if his whole body was covered in blood. The star elf that was letting out an ear-piercing shriek was still like a berserk beast. It was unrelenting as it swung its huge palm, smashing away the treasures that were attacking it. Judging from this scene, it was no wonder that Arjur was known as one of the strongest beings in the box court. Not only did it possess a terrifyingly strong life force, it also had an indomitable will. It swung its arms like a madman and continued to move forward in the rain of precious artifacts. If Arjur could persevere, he would be able to reach Noah sooner or later and unleash another earth-shattering attack. It was a pity that Arjur's perseverance was not inferior to his own title, but his master did not have the same ability. You! What are you doing? Arjur? Luos, who had long been dominated by fear due to Noah's endless supply of divine spark equipment, couldn't help but let out a shameful cry. He's just a human. Take him down for me. Before he could finish his sentence, a luxurious longsword pierced through the void like an arrow and shot towards Luos. Luos' expression changed abruptly. He raised the scythe-shaped sword in his hand and blocked in front of him. Clang! The noble phantasm collided with the scythe-shaped sword in Luos' hand. A crisp sound was heard and the unparalleled force of impact shook Luos' arm. In a hurry, Luos could not exert much strength. After being hit by such an unexpected attack, his arm went numb. He groaned and could not help but let go of the scythe-shaped sword in his hand. The scythe-shaped sword that could even chop off the head of a Medusa left Luos' hand and spun like a windmill. Finally, with a clang, it stabbed into the ground. Gulp! Luos could only hold his numb arm and take a few steps back with a pale face. Down below, Noah glanced sideways at Luz, who was hovering in the air, and calmly said with an emotionless tone. I'm in the mood now. That's why I didn't aim these weapons at you. If you're confident that you won't die under the attack of a godhead weapon like the astral spirit that you've enslaved, then go ahead and mess things up. In other words, Luo's voice would only dampen Noah's mood. You bastard. Luo's face was filled with anger, but more than that, he was terrified. He had no choice. Under the continuous attack of a godhead weapon, Luo's did not even have the confidence to survive for a second. If Noah really changed the target of the noble phantasm from Arjul to Luo's would be riddled with holes in an instant, and he would die without a doubt, right? When Luo's understood the situation clearly, his heart was filled with rage and fear. Forget it. It's enough. The anger and fear in his heart made Luo's ignore Noah's warning and shouted at Arjul. Arjul! Release your true power. Freeze that human for me forever. Upon hearing Luo's words, Arjul finally stopped his charge. Poof! 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 Without slowing down, the treasures continued to pierce through Arjul's body. Alger, on the other hand, turned a blind eye to the incoming attack. He landed on all fours like a wild beast and suddenly raised his head. His eyes emitted a dazzling red light. Wang! The next moment, the glaring red light turned into a beautiful ray of light. Like a flash of light, it violently swept through the incoming weapons. Immediately after, the treasures that were shooting towards Arjul like raindrops froze in midair. Their surfaces instantly turned into a heavy gray color. Petrification. At the position of the snake-haired demon's head on Immortal Constellation Mountain, the astral spirit that was known as the Devil Star, had finally released its true power. This petrification ability was Arjul's true strength. Even if they were treasures from myths and legends, they still couldn't avoid being petrified. They turned into waves of light particles and returned to the treasury. Not only that, the petrification ray was like a beam of light that swept through the ground. At the same time, the petrification ray shrouded Noah's direction. Be careful. The three girls, Black Rabbit, Kiyoshi Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki could not help but shout. However, Noah only looked at the incoming petrification ray and raised one of his hands. Wang! In the next moment, a golden ripple fluctuated in the space beside Noah. A mirror-like light shield suddenly flashed out of the golden ripple and stood in front of Noah. The petrification ray that swept through like a beam of light landed directly on the mirror-like light shield. In fact, there were a few versions of the legend of Perseus killing Medusa. Among them, there were two versions that were the most popular. One version was that Perseus had taken advantage of Medusa's deep sleep and used a sneak attack to cut off Medusa's head. The other version was that Perseus used the mirror shield given by Athena to reflect the petrifying light of the Medusa. Only then did he cut off the head of the Medusa who had lost her petrifying power. Now, Noah had simulated the second version of the legend. Buzz! The petrifying light beam that landed on the mirror-like light shield was suddenly reflected back and swept across the ground at a speed faster than when it came. Woo 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 woo. Arjul could only let out a shriek like a dying beast. His body was covered by his own petrification light and turned into a stone statue. Chapter 1286. In this abrupt situation, Arjul's ear-piercing shriek vanished without a trace, causing the entire space to fall into an indescribable silence. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Endless Fantasy Translation. When everyone regained their senses, they could only see the petrified ground and Arjul standing in the middle of the petrified ground. Luo's, who was hovering in mid-air, witnessed the petrified scene with his own eyes. Blood drained from his face and his lips trembled. Hum! A golden ripple appeared beside Luo's in an instant, accompanied by the sound of space trembling. A sharp longsword slowly emerged from the ripple and pointed at Luo's head. Luo's felt a fatal sense of danger surging in his heart, causing a horrified expression to appear on his face. At this critical moment, Luo's tried his best to tilt his body to the side and tilted his head back as though he wanted to break his neck. The sharp longsword sliced through the air with a faint whistling sound, brushing past the space less than 5 centimeters in front of Luo's. Just now, If Luz had been a second slower to raise his head, then this profligate's head would have been directly pierced through. By then, even if Luoz had half the bloodline of the gods and was considered a high-level life form, he would still die on the spot. Sweat dripped from the tip of Luoz's nose as he understood this point. At this moment, another golden ripple appeared on the other side of Luoz. Seeing this scene, Luz's face turned ghastly pale in an instant. Fortunately, this time, what emerged from the golden ripple was not a lethal weapon, but a silver chain with golden light flowing all over it. Whoosh! The silver chain with golden light flowing all over it swept across the space and turned into the shadow of a whip that struck Luoz's waist heavily. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, Luz let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire body shot down from mid-air, rubbing against the atmosphere, bringing about a sharp piercing sound as he crashed heavily onto the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Luoz could only clutch his waist and cough out some blood foam as he struggled to lift his head. Luoz saw it the moment he lifted his head. He saw a scythe-shaped sword pointing at him, a scene that was imprinted in his eyes. It was the sickle-shaped sword that Luoz had sent flying. Noah held the sickle-shaped sword that he had pulled out from the ground and pointed it at Luoz while looking down at him from above. Although you're one of the strongest astral elves, you're still a slave to a spoiled brat. Is this all you've got? Luoz's face contorted slightly. However, Noah's words were not wrong. As one of the strongest astral elves and the strongest astral elves among the 3 strongest astral elves, even if Arjul's strength was not comparable to White Yiksha's, it was definitely not at this level. Unfortunately, as a astral elves, Arjul was enslaved by Perseus. His spiritual lattice had shrunk significantly, and his strength had decreased exponentially. Furthermore, he was enslaved by Luoz, an ignorant spoiled brat. Thinking about it, the restraints on Arjul's body must have been locked onto Luoz's body because Luoz was unable to control his enslaved target. This restricted Arjul's strength and allowed Luoz to control him successfully. As one of the strongest astral elves, his strength was weakened over and over again, which led to Arjul's defeat. Otherwise, Noah believed that he would not have been able to defeat one of the strongest astral elves without taking any damage without releasing the relic's true name from the treasury. The famous astral elves have fallen to such a level. How pitiful. Noah sneered. However, it's over now. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's eyes turned cold. He suddenly raised the scythe-shaped sword in his hand above his head and slashed it down heavily at Luoz's head. Luoz would definitely die if the sword slashed down. Luoz, who understood his fate, did not even have the time to scream. The slash that tore through the air was imprinted in his eyes. Clank. Just when Luoz thought he was going to die, a crisp sound was suddenly heard. It was the sound of Noah's scythe-shaped sword being blocked. It was a paper fan that blocked the scythe-shaped sword. It was an ordinary paper fan that could not be any more ordinary. Alright, kid, that's enough. As he said that, Bayasha appeared beside Noah without anyone noticing. He extended his hand and used the paper fan in his hand to block the scythe-shaped sword that could kill a deity. He stared at Noah and said, "No matter what, I'm still the ruler of the East District, the manager of order. This guy is also my comrade in the same community. It's not good to kill him in front of me, right?" Before Noah could respond to White Yiksha's words, Luoz, who still had a lingering fear in his heart, shouted out in anger from embarrassment. "Do you still know that you're the ruler of the East District? This guy is brazenly preparing to kill someone. I request that you punish him." It had to be said that Luoz, the spoiled brat, did not know how to appreciate favors. Bayasha took the initiative to save Luoz's life, but this guy vented his anger on Bayasha. He was the best example of a spoiled brat. In response, Immerse 16 Knights, who also came over, said with a smile, "I remember that the one who attacked first was this spoiled brat, right?" "That's right," Joyuen Asaka said without hesitation. Noah was only defending himself. What crime is there? Or rather, the one who attacked first should be punished, right? Haruai Buyao tilted his head and said, Then, should we be the ones asking for punishment? That's right. Black Rabbit nodded heavily. Lord Bayasha, Mr. Luos attacked a member of our community. We should have the right to ask him to apologize, right? You want me to apologize to a mere John Doe? Luos was about to explode from anger. Don't even think about it. Did you hear that? Bayasha. Noah cast his gaze on Bayasha and said with a faint smile. Tell me, what should we do about this? Don't worry. I've been watching this from the side. I know very well who's right and who's wrong. Bayasha glanced at Luos and snorted coldly. The one who attacked first was indeed Luos from Perseus. I accept your request. What? Luos widened his eyes in disbelief. What? Do you have a problem with that? Bayasha looked at Luos and a boldness that was even stronger than Noah's surged from him. If you can't accept it, then I can also hold a meeting and publicize what the leader of Perseus did today, including the fact that he was beaten up by the opponent he looked down on, to the entire East District. Luos's face twitched, but he could not say anything else. If news of him being beaten up in the name of self-defense after attacking first spread throughout the entire East District, then Perseus would be utterly humiliated. Even if they were to retire from the 5-digit ranking, they would still have to accept other people's disdain. However, it was absolutely impossible for Luos to apologize to Noah. As if he saw through Luos's thoughts, Noah raised the scythe-shaped sword in his hand and suddenly said, "Forget it. There's no need for an apology. I'll just ask for this bestowed weapon as compensation." What? Luos cried out. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. If the bestowed weapon passed down by Perseus was given a no name because of Luos's personal battle compensation, then Luos would not only be humiliated, but he might even be impeached by the members of the community. Most importantly, if he lost the gift of the scythe-shaped sword, Luos's strength would greatly decrease. This was something Luos could not accept. What? You can't accept it? Noah turned his head and looked at Luos, then suddenly smiled. Then, why don't we use the bestowed game to decide? Chapter 1287. Gift Game. Suddenly, everyone present was stunned. Luos was also stunned for a moment, and then an idea popped up in his mind. This guy, he must be thinking of using this opportunity to take back the vampire, right? This idea, it must be said, was quite stupid. After all, if Noah's goal was only this, then he should just let Luos hand over Letitia's ownership to him as compensation. Why would he need to take the scythe-shaped sword and use it as a bargaining chip to start the gift game? Thus, when Luos had such a self-righteous idea, Noah's next words once again stunned him. If you can win the gift game, then I will let bygones be bygones and return the gift weapon to you. Noah looked at Luos with a malicious gaze. If you lose, then you will also use the gift weapon as compensation and give me Hermes' boots. How about it? What? Luos was stunned. Don't you want to take back the vampire? There are many ways to take back Letitia. Noah played with the scythe-shaped sword in his hand while casually replying. Anyway, aren't you planning to sell Letitia? When the time comes, I will buy her back for 10 times the price. 10 times the price? Jiyoshi Asaka and Haruhi Yayoshi were shocked. 10 times the price? Byakuya and 16 Knights were also shocked. 10 times the price? Black Rabbit almost fell over. 10 times the price? Luos simply laughed out loud. Are you kidding? What kind of price do you think I sold the vampire for? How can a no-name, who doesn't even have a flag or a name, pay 10 times the price? This was also the reason why everyone was shocked. One should know that Luos did not hesitate to use the name of Thousand Eyes, which allowed Perseus to take root in the 5-digit community, to cancel the gift game that had Letitia as a prize. He planned to sell Letitia outside of the box. To be able to make Luos, who loved to eat, drink, and have fun. To do this, one could imagine how much the person who wanted to buy Letitia had paid. Meanwhile, the community known as No Name was already in dire straits. Under such circumstances, how could they pay 10 times the price? That was why Black Rabbit almost fell over. After all, no one knew better than Black Rabbit how poor No Name was. Under such circumstances, Noah looked at Luos with a smile and raised his hand. In the next moment, golden ripples appeared from the space behind Noah. One by one, the highest grade of divinity-grade weapons appeared in front of everyone's eyes. I just don't know how much you're willing to pay. Noah suddenly smiled. But, I think, no matter how expensive it is, it can't be more expensive than the divinity-grade gifts that I have, right? Also, no one would be willing to reject my divinity-grade gifts in exchange, right? Luos stopped breathing. The spectators were also stunned on the spot. That's right. In the box, gifts were undoubtedly the most expensive things. Among all the blessings, the Godhead was undoubtedly the most precious. With so many divinity-grade gifts, who wouldn't be willing to trade with Noah? 10 times the price? Perhaps, Noah only needed to take out 1 or 2 divinity-grade weapons in exchange for a vampire. Unless there was a special purpose, no matter who it was, they would be eager to please Noah, right? Only then did everyone realize what was going on. The man in front of them was the real nouveau riche. This was because Noah had considered that the currency in circulation in this world was specially made, so he didn't take out the mountain of gold coins. Otherwise, Luos would definitely be scared to death. While everyone was still in shock, Noah spoke calmly. Do you want to play or not? If not, I'll leave. After saying that, Noah lowered his hand, and the treasures retreated back into the golden ripples one after another. The golden ripples rippled like water and disappeared, and it looked like it was about to leave. Wait! Wait! Luos quickly shouted. Even if you want to play a game of gifts, you have so many divinity-grade gifts, I can't beat you at all. This is not fair. Is that so? Noah turned around and looked at Luos with an unfathomable expression. If that's the case, how about I give you an advantageous condition? After saying this, Noah stretched out his hand. A golden ripple spread out and spat out 10 gold coins, which fell into Noah's hand. The content of the game of gifts is purely to test one's luck by tossing gold coins. You can't use any factors other than luck, including gifts, to influence the outcome. Noah raised the 10 gold coins in his hand. As for these 10 gold coins, if all of them are heads, I'll win. If one of them is tails, you'll win. How about that? Noah's words shocked everyone. Mr. Noah? Hey-2 quickly asked. Isn't this too disadvantageous for you? It's purely to test one's luck and you can't use any factors other than luck. All 10 gold coins must be heads for you to win. Zhou Yuanfei was also shocked. It's not disadvantageous anymore. It's almost impossible, right? I think it's very difficult. Haruai Buyao looked troubled. If I were to do it, I wouldn't have the confidence to win either. Brat, are you serious? Even White Yiksha's brows furrowed. No, I should say, do you really want to win? Only 16 knights didn't say anything. He just looked straight at Noah. When he saw that Noah maintained the highest level of calmness, he laughed. What? Isn't it interesting? What's wrong with trying? Hey-2, Zhou Yuanfei, and Haruai Buyao didn't expect 16 knights to agree. They were all at a loss. At this time, Luos finally reacted and stared at Noah. You really won't use factors other than luck to interfere? What are you worried about? Noah shrugged. There are Hakata nobles here who have the right to judge. If Hey-2 is the judge, then it's impossible to cheat, right? Fine. Luos's expression was uncertain as he clenched his teeth. All 10 gold coins must be heads for you to win. Noah didn't say anything and just looked at Byakuya. Since both sides have agreed, then I have no objections. Byakuya sighed and took out his gift card. In the next second, Byakuya's gift card flashed and turned into two pieces of parchment paper that fell into Noah's and Luo's hands. What appeared from Byakuya's gift card was a gift called a contract document. It was a necessary document for the gift game. Not only did the document record the organizer, participants, game rules, winning conditions, punishment, failure conditions, and other game-related information, but it also had a certain degree of power. For example, when the contract document said, "Can't use gifts to harm participants," then the power of the contract would protect the participant. Even if the participant was attacked, they wouldn't be harmed. Moreover, as long as the contract document was there, the participant couldn't go against the price they had to pay to lose the game. Therefore, the contract document was the most important gift for Hakata, who treated the gift game as everything. And on the contract document in Noah's and Luo's hands, it also clearly recorded information about the gift game that was about to be held. Gift game name, Test of Luck. Participant 1, Noah Dole. Participant 2, Luo's Perseus. Game rules, factors other than luck are not allowed. Participant 1 victory conditions, all 10 gold coins face heads. Participant 2 victory conditions, when participant 1 is unable to achieve the victory conditions. Requirements, when the participant interferes with the game process with factors other than luck, it will be judged as a failure. Oath, respect the above content, based on the glory and flag, and the organizer's authority, the gift game will be held. Thousand Eyes Seal. Chapter 1288. Bestowment Game Name, Test of Luck. Contestant 1, Noah Dole. Contestant 2, Luo's Perseus. Game rules, factors other than luck are not allowed. Contestant 1 victory condition, 10 gold coins all face the front. Contestant 2 victory condition, when contestant 1 is unable to achieve the victory condition. Requirements, when contestant uses factors other than luck to interfere with the game process, it will be judged as a failure. Oath, respect the above content. Based on glory, flag, and the host's authority, the bestowment game will be held. Thousand Eyes Seal. After confirming that there were no problems with the contents of the contract, Noah and Luo's handed the contract to White Yiksha at the same time and looked at each other. Noah directly threw the 10 gold coins to Black Rabbit. Black Rabbit, you will be the judge. I know. Black Rabbit held the 10 gold coins nervously as he walked to the middle of Noah and Luo's. Then, let's begin the bestowment game between Noah Dole and Luo's Perseus. I, Black Rabbit, will be the judge. Do you two have any objections? Noah naturally shook his head and expressed that he had no objections. Even Luo's did not express his opinion and agreed with Black Rabbit's decision. Logically speaking, Noah and Black Rabbit were companions. If Black Rabbit were to be the judge, it was very likely that the other party would be biased towards Noah and help Noah cheat to win the bestowment game. That shouldn't have made Luo's feel so assured. However, the ears and eyes of Rabbit, who was known as the Box Court Aristocrat, were connected to the Box Court's central hub. In the bestowment game, Rabbit could determine the loser and choose the chips. If Black Rabbit wanted to use his personal selfishness to forcefully influence the decision, he would directly explode and die. It was not a joke. His entire body would explode and turn into minced meat. He would be deader than dead. Because of this, Luo's was not worried that Black Rabbit would secretly side with Noah. Then, Black Rabbit tightly held the gold coins in his hand. The game begins. After saying that, the Black Rabbit threw the 10 gold coins in its hand up at the same time. Everyone's eyes followed the 10 gold coins that were being tossed into the air, and then lowered their heads to follow the free-falling gold coins. Clang 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 clang. With a crisp sound, the 10 gold coins fell to the ground and rolled for a while. Not long after, the 10 gold coins all stopped rolling and lay quietly on the ground. At this moment, everyone present widened their eyes in shock. This was because the 10 gold coins lying quietly on the ground were all facing the front. That's right. All of it. In other words, Noah had won with a pitifully small probability. That's impossible. Luos yelled. How could such a small probability appear? Not to mention Luos, even the rest of the people were stunned as they looked at each other. Only 16 knights had a pensive look in his eyes. As a combat power type, 16 knights reverse naturally did not believe that such a pitifully small probability would appear only once. However, Noah's calm demeanor told 16 knights that he had absolute confidence that he could make this pitifully small probability appear. Then, why was Noah so confident? Undoubtedly, other than luck, other factors were not allowed to be involved, right? Could it be that Noah is really confident that he can win this game that seems to have a pitiful chance of winning by luck alone? No. Impossible. No one could have absolute confidence in the illusory concept of luck. Noah must have used some method to do it, and it wouldn't violate the rules. What method could it be? In an instant, 16 knights fell into deep thought. Unfortunately, 16 knights could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought. This was because 16 knights didn't know that Noah had a skill that originated from his ability value. It was a skill called protection from the world. Protection from the world, a permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that were directly related to luck would eventually lead to the most favorable outcome. It was this skill that gave Noah the confidence to win in a game that relied purely on luck. Of course, in fact, Noah was not as confident as he looked. After all, this skill that came from his ability points, in the end, should be considered as a gift. And the rules of the game were that other than luck could not interfere with the game. This included the use of gifts. Therefore, Noah himself did not know whether protection from the world would be effective or not. However, the nature of this skill was the blessing that the world gave to Noah. Therefore, rather than calling it a gift, it was better to call it the world's preference. Noah was gambling. He was gambling to see if the world's preference for him would win over the judgment of the central hub. He was gambling to see if the skill, protection from the world, would be judged as another influence. Now, it was up to the central hub to judge. Anyway, if he lost, he would just have to return the scythe sword. For Noah, it was not a big deal at all. However, this way, it would be troublesome to take back Letitia. Noah would also not be able to teach this ignorant and incompetent second generation a lesson. Yes. The reason why he wanted to hold such a game was to let this nouveau riche and the second generation have a taste of what it means to be a nouveau riche in the second generation. What was it like to be a prodigal? Therefore, Noah calmly asked Black Rabbit for confirmation. Black Rabbit, did the central hub judge that I cheated? Hearing this, Black Rabbit closed his eyes. A pair of long ears trembled slightly. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked at Noah. That pair of eyes was filled with shock and surprise. However, Black Rabbit still gave the answer truthfully. The central hub of the central hub believes that Mr. Noah did not cheat in this game. It was completely based on luck. The game's conditions are met, and the game's results are still valid. As soon as he finished, the way everyone looked at Noah changed. He became extremely confused and startled. Was it really just luck that achieved this result? How was this possible? On the other side, Noah also let out a sigh of relief. Seems like the world's preference for me is greater than the central hub's judgment. But Luos shook his head in disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. Unfortunately, no matter how much Luos did not dare to believe, the result was the result. Then, young master of the five-figure community, please follow the rules of the game and give me the reward. Noah's lips curled up. It's Hermes' boots. Don't try to cheat. Hearing this, Luos' body trembled slightly. Not only did he lose the scythe sword, but he also lost Hermes' boots. The two extremely famous gifts that were inherited from his ancestors were obtained by no name, just like that. In the future, How could Perseus establish a foothold in the box? If it was any other reward, then so be it. However, the scythe and boots were the founder of Perseus, the famous hero Perseus left behind the legend of the community. If Luos really lost it, then it was easy to imagine what kind of infamy Luos would have to bear. With this thought in mind, Luos finally walked on a path of no return. Wait! Wait! Luos shouted. I still want to bet. I still want to bet with you. Hearing Luos' words, Noah smiled. That smile was as if everything was going according to Noah's plan. With the smile on his face, Noah asked in a seemingly kind manner. I don't mind, but this time, what do you plan to use as the bet? I'll use this. Luos seemed to have completely turned into a gambler. He took out his gift card and in the flash of the gift card, he took out a helmet. Hades' helmet of invisibility. I'll use this to continue the bet with you. Okay. Noah agreed without hesitation. This game, I accept. As a result, a one-sided gamble that had no suspense, and the most unbelievable and hilarious unfolded silently on the petrified field. Chapter 1289. Half an hour later, on the ground that was still petrified, White Yiksha, Black Rabbit, Jill Yubi, and Haruai Hikari's group looked at each other in silence. Their expressions were strange and complicated to the extreme. Reverse 16 Nights was also silent. His expression wasn't that complicated. He was just taking pleasure in others' misfortune. This schadenfreude was directed at none other than a certain ignorant and incompetent second generation. Why, Luos, who was almost completely stripped, was lying on the ground with only a pair of shorts on his body. He checked the 10 gold coins that were used to execute the game over and over again, trying to find out if the gold coins were tampered with. As a result, every time he checked, Luos became more and more desperate. Why? Why do I keep losing? In front of the extremely unwilling Luos, there were many things piled up in front of Noah. Among those things, there was the scythe sword that could kill gods, the boots of Hermes that could fly, and even the helmet of Hades that could turn invisible. Most of the many gifts that the hero Perseus had were here. Other than that, there were some other things. There was a gift weapon in the shape of a flame bow. There were pieces of IOUs that were filled with Luos's name. Even the clothes that Luos was still wearing were piled up messily on the floor. And these were all Noah's spoils of war. Noah, who was happily counting his spoils of war, looked at the almost completely stripped Luos with a playful attitude and shrugged. I say, young master, do you still want to gamble? When the word gamble came out of Noah's mouth, Luos's whole body trembled. His face was filled with the greatest fear that he had ever felt. That fear even exceeded the fear that Luos felt when he saw Noah's endless divine persona-grade gift weapons. It couldn't be helped. Because of the word gamble, Luos had lost almost all of his assets. In this half an hour, Noah and Luos had gambled at least a dozen times. And every time, Noah would emerge victorious. Under such circumstances, Luos had lost everything. The biggest ones were the various gifts they had inherited from their ancestors. It was as small as the clothes he was wearing. Apart from that, there was also the community's money, items, and even collections. Luos had lost almost all of them to Noah. That was the reason for those IOUs. It could be said that apart from the community's flag, name, companions, and the short necklace that represented Noah's sovereignty over the demon star, Luos had lost everything else to Noah. Moreover, there was not the slightest bit of suspense. Under such circumstances, how could Luos not be afraid of the word gamble? Why? Luos was about to go crazy. He kept checking the gold coins in his hand with bloodshot eyes. Undoubtedly, other than luck, no other factors can interfere. Why do I keep losing? Why? This was also the question in the hearts of everyone present. It was clearly written in black and white on the contract. Other than luck, no other factors were allowed to interfere. Otherwise, it would be determined that the person who interfered had lost. As for Noah and Luos, one of them had to have all 10 gold coins face heads to win, while the other only had to have 1 gold coin face tails to win. No matter how one looked at it, it was impossible for Noah to lose to the former, right? Yet, Noah was always the winner of these gambles. That was only considered a win if all 10 gold coins were facing the head. If it appeared once, it was already considered extremely lucky. If it appeared twice, it could only be said to be extremely lucky. If it appeared 3 times, then it was already heaven-defying. In the end, after more than a dozen rounds, the 10 gold coins were all in the front in each round. How could pure luck reach such a level? How was that possible? You must have done something. Luz roared at Noah, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Speak. What exactly did you do? I say, ignorant and incompetent second-generation young master, are you still suspecting that I cheated? Noah said in a tone that was both sympathetic and pitiful. Then you can continue to seek confirmation from the nobles of Hakata. I don't mind. Seek confirmation. How was he going to seek confirmation? From the beginning until now, Luos had already suspected Noah of doing something in the game more than once. However, Black Rabbit, who had the authority to judge, had confirmed time and time again that Noah did not cheat. Those were the answers given by the central authority of Hakata. As a nobleman of Hakata, if Black Rabbit went against the rules and sided with Noah, he would explode and die. Hence, this answer could not be false. However, who would believe that Noah did not cheat? Even Noah's companions, Reverse 16 Knights, Joyuen Flying Bird, Kasuga Hikari, and Black Rabbit would not believe it. However, if Noah had cheated, why did the central authority of Hakata not judge that Noah had violated the rules? Could it be that Noah had really relied on pure luck? This puzzling situation made the Sun Star Spirit, White Yiksha, and the intelligent Reverse 16 Knights troubled, not to mention the ignorant and incompetent Luos. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Luos grabbed his head and looked like he was going crazy. What's the problem? However, Noah did not show the slightest bit of pity or sympathy. Instead, he spoke directly. I say, do you still want to bet or not? If not, I'll take my loot and leave. Finishing his sentence, Noah took out the dark gold gift card. Clank. The dark gold gift card suddenly emitted a dazzling light that enveloped the pile of loot in front of Noah. It kept the scythe sword, Hermes' boots, and Hades' helmet of invisibility. Seeing this scene, Luos could no longer remain silent. Wait. Wait. Luos said with a trembling voice, as if he was at his wit's end. I still want to bet with you. This sentence made 16 Knights Reversal, White Yiksha, Black Rabbit, Joyu Asuka, and Haruhide Masaaki cast pitiful gazes at Luz. However, Luos was really at his wit's end. Other than continuing to bet, Luos had no other way to get back those lost bets. Isn't that vampire one of your companions? Luos roared with a twisted expression, as if he was going all out. I'll use that vampire as the wager. Reverse 16 Knights, Jo Yuki, and Haruai Toshi's eyes lit up, and the corners of their mouths lifted slightly. Black Rabbit even reached out his hand and grabbed Noah's sleeve tightly. Noah naturally understood Black Rabbit's thoughts. He patted Black Rabbit's hand lightly, but on the surface, he said this with a bored attitude. Alright, although I can spend some money to buy Letitia back, since I don't need to spend any money, that's more to my liking. Hearing Noah's words, Black Rabbit picked up the gold coin again and walked between Noah and Luos excitedly and nervously. Then, let the game begin again. Hurry up. Luos stared at Black Rabbit's hand that was holding onto the gold coin with bloodshot eyes. Don't drag it out. Hurry up and throw it. Hearing this, Black Rabbit ignored Luos's irrational words and threw the gold coin in his hand into the air. Clang 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 clang, with a series of crisp sounds, the 10 gold coins hit the ground once more. After rolling for a while, they settled down. The moment the results came out, Luz fell to his knees with a thud sound, his face full of despair. In the end, the 10 gold coins were still facing up. The winner was Noah. Yay! Black Rabbit jumped up excitedly. Mr. Noah won. Mr. Noah won. Lady Letitia can come back now. Reverse 16 Knights, Kiyoshi Asuka, and Haruhide Masaaki looked at each other and smiled. Even White Yiksha revealed a gratified expression, looking at Luos with eyes full of schadenfreude. Nouveau riche, you've finally lost this time. How is it, young master? Eldest young master? Noah asked with a faint smile. Do you still want to bet? Luos shuddered, then shuddered again and again. In the end, his eyes rolled back, and he actually fell to the ground unconscious. Everyone was dumbfounded. He fainted. How big of a blow did he have to endure? What a sin, what a sin. Chapter 1290. The next day, in the no-name base's meeting room, everyone welcomed their former companions who used to belong to this community. This time, I'm really grateful for everyone's kindness. The vampire girl who had extremely bright golden hair that reached her waist was tied behind her head with a ribbon. Her figure was extremely petite, but her face was extremely cute. She lifted her skirt and bowed to everyone in the meeting room with etiquette that she was not used to. To be able to return to this community, I'm really touched. Everyone's kindness, Letitia will definitely remember it in her heart. Hearing this, 16 Knights Reverse, Jiryu Asuka, and Haruhito Masaaki were all speechless. Not only 16 Knights, Jill Yuki, and Haruai Toshi, but even Black Rabbit and Ren were dumbfounded. They looked at Letitia with an incredulous expression. The room suddenly fell into an indescribable silence. Under such circumstances, Letitia raised her head and said with some confusion. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Everyone suddenly looked at each other. Noah, who was in the middle of the crowd, scratched his cheek. He represented everyone present and raised a question to Letitia. Why are you dressed like that? Taking a closer look, Letitia wasn't wearing the red leather jacket that Noah saw last time. Instead, she was wearing a white dress with blue edges and a pleated edge. It looked a little light and was a very cute maid's uniform. Letitia, who was already extraordinarily cute, wore such a petite maid dress. It had to be said that she was really cute to the extreme. She was so cute that people couldn't help but think that they were looking at a doll. However, it was this dress that made Black Rabbit and Ren's faces messy. Letitia. Master Letitia. Black Rabbit said with some confusion. Why dress up as a maid? Ren also nodded. His expression was the same as Black Rabbit's, full of confusion. It wasn't that Black Rabbit and Ren were too anxious. It was just that Letitia's dress was too out of their expectations. After all, Letitia herself was not only a pure-blooded vampire, but also had a divinity. She even wreaked havoc in the box as the Demon King. After joining the community, with Letitia's identity as the former Demon King, it was easy to imagine what kind of status she would have. To Black Rabbit and Ren, Letitia was undoubtedly a senior that they had to look up to. But now, this senior had changed into a maid's uniform. How could Black Rabbit and Ren not be confused? So you're referring to this? Letitia seemed to have only just remembered this and said. White Yiksha asked me to wear this. Lord White Yiksha. Black Rabbit was stunned. Yes, Letitia said matter-of-factly. I am now Master Noah's servant, so I naturally have the right to call myself a servant. Servant? Black Rabbit and Ren were stunned again. Servant? Kiyoshi Asuka and Haruai Buyaichi blinked. Servant? Noah was also stunned. Instead, it was 16th Knight who seemed to have understood what was going on and suddenly opened his mouth. So that's how it is. Because the second-generation young master lost this blonde lowly, then she naturally became the property of the winner, right? After 16th Knight mentioned this, everyone remembered this matter. Indeed. As the property of Luos, Letitia lost to Noah in the gift game in the form of a bet. In other words, Noah had the ownership of Letitia. Even if that's the case, I've never thought of making you my servant, have I? Noah hurriedly said. I'm just helping the community win you back. Even if it's counted, it should be the property of the community, right? Your words are a bit wrong, Master Noah. Letitia frowned and said to Noah in a mature tone. Although it's natural to work for the welfare of the community, you've obtained victory in the game of blessings in your own name and obtained ownership of me. In other words, I'm considered your possession, and the community isn't so pedantic as to confiscate the private property of its members. But, treating you as an item, I didn't think of that. Noah frowned. You have your own will and your own thoughts. There's no reason for me to restrict your personal freedom, and I don't want to do that. Hearing this, Letitia was startled. Soon after, her stern and beautiful face eased up. Master Noah is indeed a very gentle person. Ah. Noah's expression became resentful. Where did you come to this conclusion? From the beginning? Letitia had a faint smile on her face. You chose to join us because you wanted to help Black Rabbit and the community. Isn't that gentle enough? Black Rabbit was stunned and said in surprise. Help me. What? So you don't know anything? 16 Knights looked at Black Rabbit and suddenly smiled. Then, she pointed at Noah. I heard it clearly. The reason why this guy joined the community was to help you. Black Rabbit was at a loss of what to do. It looked at Noah with eyes full of confusion and doubt. Is that so? The reason isn't important at all. Noah looked away embarrassedly. I chose to join this community based on my own will. There's no other meaning. Hee hee. Letitia covered her mouth and secretly laughed a few times. Master Noah, don't feel shy. It's okay. Lou. So long-winded. Noah awkwardly changed the topic. Aren't we discussing Letitia's problem now? This problem doesn't need to be discussed at all. Letitia stood up and looked straight at Noah. No matter what Master Noah thinks, you won fair and square in the game of gifts and obtained my ownership. Then, I have the obligation to become your property. This is the rule that must be followed in this world where the game of gifts is everything. Master, you must understand. Okay. Noah frowned and said helplessly. But, there's no reason to make you my servant, right? Is that so? Letitia tilted her head and said in confusion. In other words, compared to a servant, I should be more of a slave. Why can't we be companions? Noah was speechless. Even if you're my personal property and can't be a companion, compared to a servant, you can still be a subordinate or something, right? Before Letitia could respond, 16 Knights spoke up first. What? Little brother. This is a golden-haired lowly maid. Don't you want her? 16 Knights said in disbelief and annoyance. If I knew I could get a golden-haired lowly maid, I would have played with that second-generation young master that day. So, I've never had a golden-haired maid. Joa Asuka looked at Letitia for a while and then sighed. I suddenly want a golden-haired maid. Monopolizing her, that's too cunning. Haruhito Yari also looked at Noah. Good things should be shared with everyone. So, I don't intend to treat Letitia as my personal property. Noah smiled bitterly and then looked at Kurorobi and Ren. Kurorobi and Ren, do you also think I should treat Letitia as my personal property? Kurorobi and Ren suddenly looked at each other. This. Kurorobi stuttered. Although it's not that I agree, but Noah-san did win the game of gifts fair and square, there's nothing wrong with that. So, I don't have the right to ask Noah-san to take out his personal property and share it with everyone in the community. Ren hesitated and also said. This may be the best result. Noah was speechless. Then, Master Noah. Letitia smiled. I'll be in your care in the future. Yes. Chapter 1291. In the game of gifts with Luos, Noah won every bet with his explosive luck and won a lot of things. In addition to the gifts that originally belonged to hero Perseus, Noah also won a lot of promissory notes signed by Luos. Those promissory notes were all Luos's assets in Perseus as collateral. Some of them were gifts, some were other precious works of art, and some were pure money. After that, Black Rabbit and Wren took these promissory notes and let White Yiksha make the decision, and obtained a lot of benefits from Perseus. Other things aside, they did obtain a lot of money, which made the originally poor and destitute, No Name, suddenly rich. After all, the amount of money that Luos took out when he used the assets in Perseus as collateral, even if it wasn't a sky-high amount, it was still the entire collection of Perseus up until now. The money in the community's treasury was in the 5 digits. It was easy to imagine how much money it was for No Name, who only had a little over 100 children. With this money, No Name could truly get rid of their destitute situation. Even if it was extravagant for a few years, there would be no problem. At this point, some people might be confused. Undoubtedly, Noah's treasury had an endless amount of gold coins, so why did he need Perseus' assets? In fact, Noah had only found out about this matter not too long ago. The money used in the box court was basically special. The currency used in the box court was usually copper, silver, and gold coins. On the surface, the currency issued in the box court city was based on the same proportion of gold, silver, and copper coins. However, in this box court city, the value of the currency was not determined by the proportion of gold, silver, and copper, but by the flag engraved on the currency. In other words, the currency in the box court was sold by the large commercial communities. Pure gold, silver, and copper were not very valuable in this world. It was said that the reason why the commercial communities sold currency was because they were competing for the currency circulation rate and the value of the gift game. That was why the community flag was engraved on the currency. For this reason, the pure gold coins in Noah's treasure vault naturally couldn't be taken out and used unless they were sold in large quantities and exchanged for currency that could be circulated in the box. Therefore, to No Name, the wealth from Perseus was as important as obtaining a treasure. Originally, according to Letitia, the money that Noah won from Luos under his own name should belong to him. There was no reason for him to contribute to No Name. However, firstly, No Name was in dire need of money, and the money in Noah's hands would undoubtedly be able to solve the community's burning need. Secondly, Noah himself wasn't that obsessed with money, which was why he took out the money for the community to use. Wren, on the other hand, expressed that he would definitely return the money to Noah. Faced with such a statement, Noah felt a little helpless and perfunctorily brushed it off. As for the 3 problem children, 16 Nights in Reverse, Zhou Yuki Fei Niao, and Haruai Bu Yao, they were living quite comfortably recently. According to what they said, there were too many interesting things in this world, and they couldn't just sit around and do nothing. These 3 problem children weren't people who could be content with their lot, and because of their own reasons in their own world, they had to hold back a lot of energy. Now that they came to this box with so many inconceivable things, and with the gift game as a stage that people were eager to try, these 3 problem children naturally couldn't just sit around and do nothing. Therefore, in this period of time, in the outer door of 2105380, one could often see traces of 16 Nights in Reverse, Zhou Yuki Fei Niao, and Haruai Bu Yao. Their purpose was naturally to participate in all kinds of gift games. This allowed No Name to obtain quite a few game rewards in a short period of time, greatly enriching the community's wealth. This made Black Rabbit, Wren, and even Lily and the other children very happy. In short, everyone was living quite comfortably during this period of time. Except for Noah. "Good morning, Master." When Noah woke up from his sleep, 2 familiar tender voices entered Noah's ears at the same time. Those 2 voices made the last trace of drowsiness in Noah's head disappear without a trace, and he even felt that his head was slightly aching. There was no other reason. It was because Noah was very clear on who these two voices belonged to. At that moment, Noah could only turn his slightly aching head and look at the source of the voices. He saw that in the middle of Noah's room, there were two petite girls standing. One was Noah's contract elf Aster. The other was Noah's vampire follower Letitia. The two petite girls who looked to be only 12 or 13 years old were wearing a blue and white maid uniform with many pleated laces and a light skirt. They were like loyal maids, waiting by Noah's bedside, greeting the waking Noah. Yes. Whether it was Letitia or Aster, they were both wearing maid uniforms. Noah couldn't help but want to cover his face. If others knew that he had made two underage girls, or rather, two young girls, wear maid uniforms to serve him, what kind of contemptuous look would they use to look at Noah? Let's not talk about Letitia for the time being. This vampire girl was instigated by White Yiksha, that idiot Xingling, to come to Noah's side as a maid. But, Aster. Noah weakly said to Aster, who didn't know how many times. Why do you also dress up as a maid? In the face of Noah's question, who knew how many times, Aster, with her usual expressionless face, gave the same answer, who knew how many times. I think Master likes this dress. In fact, the real reason was Letitia. For Letitia, who also called Noah as her master, Aster seemed to want to compete with her, so she dressed up as a maid. And Letitia, who provoked Aster's competitive spirit, seemed to be enjoying the interaction with Aster. Therefore, under various circumstances, a blonde loli and a silver-haired loli both became Noah's personal maids. Noah, who knew that no amount of persuasion would work, gave up and waved his hand. Okay, you two go out first, I'll change my clothes. Letitia and Aster glanced at each other. Then, they said the same thing in unison. Master, please let me help you change your clothes. Noah's mouth twitched, speechless as he looked at the sky. After about 20 minutes of fiddling with the two Lolita maids, Noah came out of his room and brought Letitia and Aster to the meeting room. In the meeting room, Jiu Yuao and Kazuhito Hikari were drinking tea and chatting. After Noah entered the room, they seemed to have sensed Noah's presence. Seeing Letitia and Aster following behind Noah, Jiu Yuan Fei Niao said in a mocking tone. How does it feel to have a blonde maid and a silver-haired maid serving you? Do I have to listen to your thoughts? Noah squinted his eyes. Then I'll be leaving. Let's drink tea together. Kazuhito Hikari bit a piece of dessert and cheeks puffed up like a squirrel, looking very cute. Lily's desserts are delicious. Noah couldn't help but roll his eyes at Kazuhito Hikari's invitation, but he still walked over and sat down. When Noah sat down, Jiu Yuao took out a teacup from the cart beside her and placed it in front of Noah. She poured tea for Noah while speaking emotionally. In the past, it was always others who poured tea for me. I never thought that there would be a day when I would pour tea for others. Chapter 1292. Kuroto once said that 16 knights in reverse, Jiyuki Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi were all summoned from different worlds. Among them, 16 knights in reverse came from the modern world. Haruhibu Yaichi came from a distant future world. As for Jiyuki Asuka, she came from Japan, which was still in the Showa era, not long after the end of World War II. Moreover, her family was one of the 5 tycoons of Japan at that time. Her family was very rich. Because of this, Jiyuki Asuka had the temperament of a real missy, but she also had conservative views. For example, during the days in No Name, Jiyuki Asuka had complained to Kuroto and Haruhibu Yaichi more than once. She felt that the two of them were ladies, and their dressing was too immoral. In fact, whether it was Kuroto or Haruhibu Yaichi, their dressing was not too revealing. Although Kuroto was wearing a miniskirt, but no matter what, her thighs were still not exposed. Haruhibu Yaichi's white thighs were directly exposed, but he was wearing shorts, so strictly speaking, it was not too revealing. But for Jiyuki Asuka, not covering her thighs was already a very revealing matter. Because of this, Jiyuki Asuka was unexpectedly very easy to be shy. In this kind of situation, Jiyuki Asuka, who did not even let others see her thighs, did not dare to face Noah for many days after her entire body was seen by Noah in the bathhouse. During that time, whenever Jiyuki Asuka met Noah, she would immediately run away with a red face. Frankly speaking, that kind of Jiyuki Asuka was really cute. It made Noah want to tease this Missy. He purposely went in front of Jiyuki Asuka several times, causing this Missy to jump and scream with a red face. Like now, returning to her initial attitude, it took her a full 10 days to do. Well, these are all off topic. In short, before Jiyuki Asuka came to Hakata, she was indeed a real Missy. Pouring tea for others was something that she did not do many times. Is that so? Noah picked up the teacup filled with flower tea and took a sip before speaking to Jiu Fei. Then, let me pour tea for you next time. Then I'll leave it to you. Jiao Fei now accepted Noah's suggestion and looked at Letitia and asked her. You two should sit down as well. No need. Letitia hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. Although I haven't been a servant for long, at the very least, I still understand that I can't sit at the same table as my master. Hearing this, Aster immediately said expressionlessly. Since this vampire doesn't want it, I don't want it either. Noah and Jiu Yuanfei couldn't help but laugh when they heard Aster's words. However, the two of them didn't insist and let Letitia and Aster go. By the way, Noah asked while drinking tea leisurely. Where are the others? Rinkuin and 16th Night went to the underground library. Jiyuki Asuka replied. 16th Night felt that she needed to increase her gaming knowledge. Rinkuin also felt that it was necessary to increase their knowledge in other areas since the community was developing rapidly, so they all went to the underground library. Kurorobi brought the children of the senior group to inspect the fields. Haruai Hiroyuki said while munching on desserts. The resources you won from Perseus, everyone feels that it is necessary to use them for the development of the community. Therefore, Black Rabbit intends to see where the land can recover. If it is possible, then order a large amount of crops from Thousand Eyes to cultivate them. Land? Noah nodded thoughtfully. Noah had been planning to recover the land for a long time. Now that he had become familiar with his companions in the community, he should be able to reduce some unnecessary scruples and take on the responsibilities of this community. It seems that if I have time, I should talk to Kurorobi and Ren. When Noah was thinking about this, Letitia's expression was a little sad, and she couldn't help but interject. The condition of the land here has indeed become quite miserable. It's hard to believe that it was the farm in the past. As members who had witnessed the heyday of this community, I believe that only Letitia, the Black Rabbit, and Ren could understand to what extent the land was now compared to the past. And in order to see her partners in the community, Letitia didn't hesitate to sacrifice her divinity and let her strength weaken to less than 1/10 of her original strength. It could be seen that this vampire girl had deep feelings for the community. Seeing with her own eyes the base of the community in the past turn into a wasteland, it was natural for Letitia, who had deep feelings for the community, to be this sad. In this regard, Haruai Hiroyuki couldn't help but say. Is there no way to restore the land to its original state? It can't be said that there is no way. Letitia shook her head. However, the land here has lost its most important vitality. If you want to restore the land, it should take a long time and a considerable amount of money, right? Is that so? Jiu Yuki said with some regret. Then wouldn't Kurorobi be very disappointed? If that's the case. Haruai Hiroyuki took out 2 pieces of dessert from the plate in front of him, then hesitated for a moment, and stuffed one of them into his mouth, and raised the other one. Let me give half of this dessert to Kurorobi to comfort her. The corners of Noah, Jiu Yuanfei, and Letitia's eyes twitched. He took 2 pieces of dessert, hesitated for a moment, and ate one of them. In the end, he only gave half of the remaining one to Kurorobi. How big must he be to do this? Well, you don't have to worry too much about this. Noah smiled helplessly. About the matter of reviving the land, I already have some ideas. Noah's words made everyone's eyes light up. Really? Master? Letitia looked at Noah with joy and surprise. Do you have a way to revive the land here? Yes. Noah said. So, you don't have to worry too much about the land. In this world where games are everything, whether or not you have the ability to win in the bestowment game is the most important thing. You should think about how to improve your own strength. When this suggestion was made, the faces of the girls all became troubled. Master Noah, if I want to become stronger, it will be very difficult. Letitia's face was bitter. I've already lost my godhead, and even my blessings are flawed. It's not impossible for me to make further progress, but before I complete my godhead and blessings, even if I cultivate with all my might, I won't make much progress. If I want to become stronger, I have to find friends. Haruai Hiroyuki held a round wooden carving with complicated patterns in front of him tightly, and said with some anger. As long as I can be friends with the beasts in the box court, I can become stronger. My bestowment is even more troublesome. Jiu Fei said with a complicated expression. Black Rabbit said that my bestowment is a raw stone that has not been completely carved. If I think about it carefully, it might be able to become stronger, but I don't want to have the power to control others to become stronger. Jiu Far Flying Bird's complicated tone made everyone realize. Perhaps, Jiu Fei's power brought her a lot of trouble in life. After all, forcefully controlling others would not be likable. The power to control? Noah pondered for a while, and then asked Jiu Fei. Your bestowment can only control people. Not only people, it has also controlled animals, and even plants. Jiu Fei answered honestly. As for whether I can control other people, I have not tried. Is that so? Noah nodded. Then, let's go outside and try. Jiu Yuanfei was stunned. Chapter 1293. After coming out of No Name's main hall, Noah and the others came to an empty space outside the door. Noah and Jiu Yufei were facing each other with quite a distance between them. Of course, to Noah, this distance could be reduced to 0 in less than a second. But Noah's goal was not to defeat Jiu Yufei, but to see Jiu Yufei's power. Noah raised his head and looked at Jiu Yufei, who was standing in front of him, and said. Then, Yufei, why don't you try to use your gift? Try to use it. Jiu Yufei was troubled. Undoubtedly, my gift has no effect on you. But you also said that the individuals you can control are not limited to humans. You can even control animals and plants, right? Noah explained. Then, you can try and see if you can control things other than life forms. Things other than life forms? Jiu Yufei was slightly startled and said hesitantly. How do I control things other than life forms? Your gift is the ability to control things, but it's not certain if this thing has to be a life form. Noah crossed his arms and looked at Jiu Yufei. If your gift is control, then you should be able to control things other than life forms. For example, this. Saying this, Noah closed his eyes and softly chanted. I use these words to provoke the gods in heaven, to use this magic, to chant this incantation, to make everything in the world bow down. The nimble word spirit transformed into ripples that spread throughout the entire space. Ever since Luos was severely beaten up by Noah, Letitia officially returned to No Name and formed a subordinate relationship with Noah. A month had passed. After a month, the world finally adapted to Noah's power that did not belong to this world, and the power called authority was once again awakened by Noah. Therefore, in Noah's heart, one of the 10 patterns on the stone plate that was connected to the outline suddenly lit up. Under the urging of the spirit of words, the incarnation called priest turned into pure power and rushed into Noah's body. Considering that the power of God combined with the power of God was much more terrifying than when he only used authority, Noah did not convert the energy in the energy source into God's power, but used magic to urge authority. Under such circumstances, the surging magic flowed in Noah's body, and with Noah's command, the power of the incarnation called priest was awakened. Wind and sand, gather around me, simple words were infused with power and echoed in the air. Suddenly, a whistling gale swept through the space around Noah. It swept up the gravel on the ground, forming a thick sandstorm. With Noah as the center, the sandstorm continued to swirl. Seeing this scene, Haroya, Letitia, and Aster, who were eating snacks on the side, raised their heads at the same time. Jiu Yuao was even more shocked. Noah, sorry, Yuao, I didn't make it clear to you. Noah opened his hands, turning the surrounding sandstorm into a whirlpool that swirled around his two hands. Then, he suddenly smiled. Actually, I also have the power to control individuals, and whether it's a living being or a simple phenomenon, I can control them all. Jiao Fei Niao was stunned. Let alone Jiu Yuao, even Haroya and Letitia looked at each other. Undoubtedly, he has the power to fight against 16 knights and endless divine armament, but he still has the same power as Yuao? Haroya whispered. That's against the rules. Indeed. Letitia sighed. How much power does my master have that we don't know? Although that was what they said, both Haroya and Letitia were happy with Noah's strength. Haroya was only happy with his friend's strength from the bottom of his heart. Apart from that, there was also a hint of envy and uneasiness. Not only 16 knights, but even Noah is so strong. If I don't quickly become stronger, perhaps one day, I will be left behind by them, and I will never be able to stand on the same side as them. Haroya couldn't help but hold the round wooden sculpture in front of him tightly, and at the same time, he was determined to become stronger. Letitia was also happy and uneasy. She was happy because Noah's power was so mysterious. With his help, this community might really have a way to return to its peak glory, take back their flag and name, and find their past companions. She was uneasy because she might not be of use. If she is satisfied with her current power, perhaps she won't be able to fight with Master Noah in the future. Although that was what she said, Letitia had already lost her divine spark, and even her gift was flawed. If he wanted to become stronger, it was impossible to do so with this flawed power. Unless she could find her divine spark. Looks like I have to think of a way. While Haroya and Letitia had their own thoughts, Jiu Haroya also recovered from her daze. She looked at Noah controlling the sand with words as if it was his arm, and there was a hint of unwillingness in her eyes. Then, I will do it too. With that said, Jiu Fei Niao also spread out his hands and declared with a stern voice. Wind and sand. Gather around me. The words that contained power once again reverberated in the air. Whoosh! With a whistling sound of the wind, a gust of wind mixed with sand blew up from the ground, like an explosion of water, and rose into the air. Just like Noah, Jiu Haroya also let the wind and sand swirl around her arms, forming two whirlpools. However, if one looked closely, one would be able to see that. Both of them were controlling the wind and sand, but Noah's every move was completed naturally. The wind and sand around Jiu Haroya not only felt slow, but also like a gear that could not be closed. It had a very difficult look to it as it rolled around, causing Jiu Haroya's face to have some beads of sweat. Obviously, Jiu Haroya's control was much weaker than Noah's. However, Noah frowned, and looked closely at the wind and sand swirling around Jiu Haroya. Although it felt forced, the wind and sand that was controlled by Jiu Haroya did indeed complete her orders. However, Noah had a feeling. The wind and sand were not controlled by Jiu Haroya. If it was controlled, then when the user's strength was not enough, the control would directly dissipate. It was like a person could lift a stone, but if the stone was too heavy, then it would not be able to be lifted. However, the scale of the wind and sand that was controlled by Jiu Haroya was obviously beyond what she could control, but it still followed her orders. That feeling, rather than saying that it was controlled, it was more like something else was added, causing the wind and sand to act according to Jiu Haroya's words. With that thought, Noah's eyes flashed, and he lifted the hand that was swirling the wind and sand whirlpool slightly, then, he said concisely. Go! The moment he said that, the wind and sand swirling around Noah's hands suddenly stopped, and then turned into a violent current, sweeping towards Jiho. The sudden attack caused Jiho to be unable to react in time, and she was stunned for a moment. In just a moment, the wind and sand that had turned into a violent current was imprinted in Jiho's eyes, like a ferocious beast that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, engulfing Jiho's body. Jiho's expression finally changed, and she subconsciously raised her hand and shouted, "Break it!" In the next moment, a shocking scene happened. They saw that the wind and sand whirlpool that was swirling around Jiho's hands suddenly increased by a few times, and like a cannonball, it swept through the air and shot towards the violent current. Pang! A muffled explosion sounded, and the wind and sand that had turned into a cannonball collided heavily, exploding at the same time. Noah's eyes flashed with a bright light. So that's how it is. Chapter 1294. The sandstorm and sandstorm cannonball collided with each other and exploded in the entire space. It was as if there was a sandstorm in the surrounding area. Cough 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 cough, Jiho, Haruhi Hiroyuki, Letitia, and Aster coughed at the same time. It was as if they were choked by the sandstorm that suddenly spread out. Seeing this, Noah stretched out his hand and a strand of magic flame appeared between his fingers. After sliding a few times in the air, it formed a strange rune. The incarnation called Priest not only could give Noah the power of domination and protection, it could also give Noah the right to use the rune again. The power of the rune that was activated with authority was probably comparable to the rune used by Odin, the main god of Norse mythology, who obtained magic power from the fountain of wisdom at the cost of an eye. However, the rune that Noah constructed was only a low-level rune that could form a breeze. Therefore, when the glowing rune was formed in the air, a breeze swept through the entire space, carrying the thick sand that filled the air and blowing it into the distance. The group of girls stopped coughing and breathed quickly. Jiho glared at Noah and said loudly, "Why did you suddenly attack?" Sorry, I just wanted to confirm something." Noah quickly raised his hands and made a gesture of surrender, but there was a smile on his face. "However, Yuao, I can now clearly tell you that your gift is not domination, but bestowal." Bestowal? Jiho was stunned. Bestowal? Haruhi Hiroyuki and Letitia were also stunned. Then, they brought Aster and came forward together. Yuao's gift is not domination, but bestowal? Letitia was a little surprised and looked at Noah with some doubt. "Master Noah, what is going on?" Jiho Fei Niao also looked at Noah with a questioning look in his eyes. Under everyone's gaze, Noah pondered for a moment, deliberated for a moment, and said so. "Actually, I should have realized that Flying Bird's gift is not domination, because the domination ability doesn't have the ability to control people's hearts. At least, my domination ability doesn't have such power. Controlling a person's body and controlling a person's heart are two completely different things. The former forced the individual's actions to go against their own will, but it would not affect the individual's spirit and consciousness. The latter, on the other hand, was a mental power that leaned towards bewitchment and hypnotism. It did not force the target under one's control to act. Instead, it controlled the target's heart and made them act on their own. Noah's domination could clearly force an individual to act according to his orders, but it would not affect the opponent's mind and will. On the other hand, the ancient flying bird was able to force others to act without affecting their mental state. It was able to make them reveal their inner secrets and thoughts according to its orders. This was evident from the fact that Jard's mind and spirit weren't affected when he was manipulated by Jiho Fei Niao, but he still revealed his inner thoughts. In other words, the ancient flying bird situation did not belong to the former, nor did it belong to the latter. It did not force an individual to act, nor did it affect the individual's mind and will. This proved that the ancient flying bird's gift was not as simple as domination. Noah also came to a conclusion from the experiment just now. The ancient flying bird's gift did not affect an individual's body or mind, but rather, it affected the spiritual core. Spiritual core. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Spiritual core. Jiu Yuao was also surprised. That's right, it's the spiritual core. Noah said in a confident tone. My domination is obviously stronger than flying birds' domination, but in the collision just now, my attack and flying birds' attack cancelled each other out. This is enough to prove that there's a problem. Hearing this, everyone began to realize that something was wrong. Now that Master Noah has mentioned it, the situation when flying bird attacked just now was indeed a little strange. Letitia's expression became serious. When Flying Bird gave the order to attack, the sandstorm that was controlled by Flying Bird suddenly became a few times stronger, which cancelled out Master Noah's attack. It became a few times stronger. Kasumi tilted his head and asked in confusion. The power of domination can make the target of domination stronger? Of course, that's impossible. Noah shook his head and looked at Jiu Fei Niao, who was at a loss. So, I'm guessing that Flying Bird's gift is not domination, but a power that affects the spiritual core. Noah recalled Jared's situation and said so. The true nature of Flying Bird's domination should be to use its own spiritual core to attach itself to another individual's body through language, so that the target with a spiritual core weaker than Flying Bird will obey Flying Bird's orders. It's the same with the sandstorm just now. Flying Bird used its own spiritual core to attach itself to the sandstorm, so that the sandstorm would obey its orders, Noah explained. The reason why the sandstorm that obeyed the order suddenly became a few times stronger is probably because Flying Bird enhanced the spiritual core that was attached to the sandstorm. Enhanced the spiritual core. Letitia was shocked, and the way she looked at ancient Flying Bird changed instantly. Could it be that the true power of Flying Bird's gift is to give a simulated godhead? Letitia's words shocked Noah. However, after the shock, Noah's heart skipped a beat. If Flying Bird's gift can really enhance an individual's spiritual core, then it might really be the gift of giving a simulated godhead. Noah was very familiar with the existence of Godhead. It could raise the level of a race to the highest level, raise the spiritual core of a race to the highest level, and increase the life level and power level of an individual by several times. In this box, it could be said to be the highest level of gift. Wanting to obtain this kind of gift was not something that could be done easily. Since it was called Godhead, then this kind of gift could only be bestowed by those gods. And if one wanted to be recognized by the gods and be bestowed with Godhead, it was not an easy thing to do. That was why the gift of simulated divinity had appeared. If Godhead could be said to be able to raise the level of a race to the highest level, and raise the spiritual core of an individual to the highest level, so that the gift of the person who obtained Godhead would be increased correspondingly, then simulated Godhead could only be used to increase the power of a certain gift. It could increase the power of a gift, and specialize the gift, with the ability to increase the spiritual core of the gift. In short, it was an inferior version of Godhead. It could not increase the life level of a race to the highest level. It could not increase the spiritual core of an individual to the highest level, and then increase the power of the other gifts that the individual had. It could only increase the power of the spiritual core of a limited gift to the highest level. Therefore, if the gift of the ancient Flying Bird could increase the spiritual core of an individual, then it would undoubtedly be the power of simulated Godhead. If the gift of the ancient Flying Bird could really bestow simulated Godhead. Letitia was a little shaken. Then this gift is really against the rules. Against the rules? Haruhibu Yaichi said in confusion. Is simulated Godhead really that powerful? What's powerful is not simulated Godhead, but bestowing simulated Godhead, Noah reminded him. Think about it carefully. If the ancient Flying Bird can bestow simulated Godhead at any time, then it means that by using those ordinary gifts, the ancient Flying Bird can increase those gifts to the level of an ordinary god. We only need to prepare a dozen ordinary gifts for the ancient Flying Bird, which is equivalent to giving the ancient Flying Bird a dozen gifts that are comparable to a god's. Hearing Noah's words, Haruhibu Yaichi realized that the ancient Flying Bird's gift was against the rules, and his eyes widened slightly. Wasn't it? There were strong and weak gifts. Weak gifts could only be used in daily life. Strong gifts were comparable to those of the real Asura gods and Buddhas, giving people the power of Asura gods and Buddhas. If the ancient flying bird could increase ordinary gifts to the level of Asura gods and Buddhas at any time, then it would be terrifying. Therefore, Noah directly said, "No matter what, let's try it first." Chapter 1295. 10 minutes later, Haruhito Masaaki, Letitia, and Aster looked at the scene in front of them, and all of them fell into a state of speechlessness. Noah and Jio-yuki were still facing each other in the field, but the two of them were in a completely different place. The ground had a charred color. Cracks spread out in all directions like a spider web. In some places, craters were blasted open. Some places seemed to have been cut by sharp blades. Some places seemed to have been hit by strong currents. Some places seemed to have been frozen, sprinkled with ice particles. Undoubtedly, 10 minutes ago, this open space was still in good condition, but it was somewhat deserted. Now, this open space seemed to have encountered some kind of disaster, and was a mess. Under such circumstances, with Noah as the leader, Haruhito Masaaki, Letitia, Aster, and the others all looked around, and fell into silence. On the other hand, Jiu Fei now stared at his own hands in disbelief. Is this my gift? The reason for this mess was Jio-yuki. To be more precise, it should be Jio-yuki's gift. In order to confirm whether Jio-yuki's gift was the power to simulate divinity, 10 minutes ago, Noah gave Jio-yuki 5 magic scrolls. Those 5 magic scrolls were all first-grade magic scrolls. And after using them, the magic that could be cast was the simplest of the 5 first-grade spells. The first-grade spell that could cast fire. The first-grade spell that could cast electricity. The first-grade spell that could cast a breeze. The first-grade spell that could cast a stream of water spirit spring. It was the first-rank spell that could freeze objects freeze. No matter which one it was, they were the weakest first-grade spells in the previous world. However, under Jio-yuki's gift, the power of these 5 first-grade spells all changed. The fire that could only be used to light a bonfire was raised to the level of nuclear heat. The electric current that could only cause a slight electric shock was raised to the level of lightning. The breeze, which could only sweep up some papers, was raised to the level of a gale. The water flow, which was only comparable to a small stream, was raised to the level of a wave. Even the cold air, which could only freeze objects, was raised to absolute zero. There was no doubt that the ancient flying bird's blessing was able to increase the output of Ling Ji's power. In other words, it was a power that could increase the power of Ling Gu. That was the power to bestow upon an individual the boon of divine persona. Just like what Noah said 10 minutes ago. Under the ancient flying bird's might, even the most ordinary of blessings would become comparable to some Asura gods and Buddhas under the amplification of the simulated divinity. Such an exceptional ability is truly amazing, Letitia murmured, not knowing whether to be happy or sad. However, this explains why the ancient flying bird's blessing is the same as 16th Night's blessing as the strongest of human blessings. It is indeed a power that ordinary blessings cannot compare to. Hiroyuki nodded lightly, looking at Jio-yuki, then looking at Noah, and then thinking of 16th Night's power. His hand that was holding the round wooden sculpture in front of him began to tighten little by little. If that's the case, then we can basically confirm it. Noah said with a smile that seemed to be both amazed and lamenting. Flying bird, your blessing is indeed not some kind of control, but rather the gift of a simulated divinity. Is that so? Jio-yuki looked around with a complicated expression, then laughed at herself. In the end, my blessing is not control at all, how ironic. Before she was summoned to the box, everyone around Jio-yufei was afraid of this young Mrs. Control because of her, Wei Guang, ability. She was even locked up in a dormitory in the school. In the end, Jio-yuki was told that her power was not control, but control was just a byproduct of her true power. It was no wonder she was so complicated. This is good too. Yuki pulled herself together, showing her usual generous smile. At least, I now know that my power is not limited to the aspect of dominating others. Since I can give individuals simulated divinity and maximize the contribution of the bestowed spirit, then in the future, I will develop in the aspect of dominating the bestowed gifts. Because of her past experience, Yuki did not want to become a witch that controlled others. Now that she found another way to improve herself, no matter what, Yuki should be happy. Unfortunately, Noah immediately poured a bucket of cold water on her. The idea is very good, but in this way, you will have to face a huge problem. A huge problem? Yuki was slightly stunned, then quickly asked. What problem? Noah sighed and walked towards Yuki. When he arrived in front of Yuki, he picked up some pieces of parchment on the ground. These shredded pieces of parchment were the magic scrolls that ancient flying bird had used before. You know what? This is actually a one-time use blessing. Noah spread out the sheepskin parchment in his hand and showed it to Yuan Feinyao. Under normal circumstances, after using the parchment paper will directly burn up, leaving not a single trace behind. However, you used those scrolls and left behind these fragments. Do you know why? Yuki frowned and shook her head, indicating that she did not understand. To this, Noah directly gave the answer. The reason why the pieces were left behind is because before they were burned, they broke on their own for another reason. They broke on their own. Yuki frowned even more. Why? The one who answered this question was not Noah, but Letitia. Because you maximized the power of the blessing, increasing the burden of the blessing itself to the maximum. This way, the lifespan of the blessing will be greatly reduced. Letitia walked over with Haruai Hiroyuki and asked her. She looked at Asaka with a serious expression. So, Yuki, although your blessing is very powerful, its weakness is also very obvious. Unless there are enough blessings for you to use, you won't be able to do anything. What? Yuki's expression suddenly became very interesting. In other words, Haruai Hiroyuki blinked. Yuki's blessing is actually a very expensive blessing. If you have to summarize, then this is it. Letitia also said with difficulty. Normal blessings will be destroyed after you use them. Even if it's a powerful blessing, if you use it, its lifespan will be greatly reduced. So, Yuki, you have to be prepared. If you want to fight to your heart's content, you will have to spend a lot of money. Yuki's expression was completely stiff. The heavens took pity on her. This young lady did not hesitate to join this poor community because she hated the conditions of being too rich. Now, in order to use her true power, she had to spend a lot of money. It had to be said that this was really ironic. Be that as it may, your gift is indeed very powerful. It is even possible for the gift of a simulated divinity to release the power of the divinity level under certain circumstances, right? Letitia looked at Noah with an amused expression. Of course, this shouldn't be a problem for Master Noah who has endless divinity level blessings. If Master Noah can provide you with a powerful blessing with a very long lifespan, I think Yuki's combat power will increase by quite a few levels, right? Hearing this, Noah slightly raised his eyebrows. You're targeting me now. Unfortunately, Yuki did not hesitate to reject. It's not impossible to be indebted to others, but it's unreasonable to ask them not to give anything in return. I will find a way to solve the problem of blessings myself. Noah was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. I almost forgot. This young lady's pride is very strong. Chapter 1296. In fact, Ancient Flying Bird's gift could bestow a simulated divinity to the target. It was not only a gift, but it could also be bestowed on people, things, and objects. Otherwise, the Ancient Flying Bird wouldn't have been able to place a simulated divinity in a being's body and have it listen to its orders. Therefore, even if it did not specifically prepare a gift, Ancient Flying Bird could still bestow a simulated divinity to other objects and fight. Unfortunately, there would be a lot of restrictions in this way. For example, if the divinity mentioned above was higher than Ancient Flying Bird's body, then Ancient Flying Bird would not be able to control it. This was because Ancient Flying Bird's simulated divinity was given through language. The voice would gradually become weaker in the process of being transmitted. Based on the above principle, Ancient Flying Bird's simulated divinity through language would definitely be degraded before it was transmitted to the target. According to the level of the target's divinity, it might even be resisted. Because of this, Ancient Flying Bird's gift was not suitable to be used on control. It was the same when it confronted Noah. At that time, Noah, who used the priest incarnation, did not use any divine power. He did not even use all of his magic power. As a result, when Noah casually used control to attack, Ancient Flying Bird had to release the simulated divinity of Sandstorm to the maximum extent to counteract it. As one could imagine, when giving a simulated divinity to an ordinary object, Ancient Flying Bird's power would indeed be degraded through the speech process. However, if the target was a gift, then it would be different. After all, the gift itself had a divinity. After being strengthened by the simulated divinity, the divinity's power would be increased to the maximum, and the power would increase by a lot. Therefore, for Ancient Flying Bird to be able to fully unleash its power, it would indeed have to be bestowed with a gift. Therefore, the path of the gift of the dominating gift, as determined by the ancient bird, is indeed the right one. The problem was that the cost of doing so was not small at all. Considering Ancient Flying Bird's self-esteem, Noah did not insist on giving Ancient Flying Bird a powerful gift. Otherwise, as long as he provided the Ancient Flying Bird with 1 or 2 treasures, in addition to this young lady's simulated divinity, he reckoned that this girl could really compete with those famous heroic spirits or gods, right? Ancient Flying Bird was also very clear about this point. However, her excessive self-esteem did not allow this lady to receive others' gift without any effort. Therefore, this matter was temporarily left unsettled. Just like that, a noisy day, night, the base of no name, once again, it was dark night. Because the water source problem had been solved, the bathhouse was now in a state of liberation almost every day. However, the time spent by boys and girls naturally had to be differentiated. This time, the bathhouse of the bathhouse. Usually, at this time, Noah would be hiding in the underground library to read, absorbing the knowledge and intelligence of the entire world. Unfortunately, within a month's time Flying Bird's not a single book, Ancient Flying Bird Library. In other words, Noah Flying Bird had read all the books in the library. Of course, this was with the help of a magic tool. In the world of fairy tale, there was a magic pair of glasses that could increase one's reading speed to the limit, allowing one to finish reading a thick book in just a few minutes. Considering the fact that every time he entered a new world, he would need to recollect information, and there would be many opportunities to deal with books. The last time he returned to the world of fairy tale, Noah had prepared a pair of glasses like this. Because of this pair of glasses, Noah Flying Bird Library was able to finish reading all the books in a month's time. He also understood a lot about the situation in this world. Under this kind of situation, Noah Flying Bird Library had nothing to do. He simply asked Letitia and Aster, who were always by his side, to go to the bathhouse while he left the library. Once he walked out of the library, Noah Flying Bird Library saw a slender figure. He was slightly startled. After hesitating for a while, Noah Flying Bird Library deliberately slowed down his footsteps and walked towards the figure. The wind in the middle of the night carried a trace of coldness. Haruai Flying Bird Library looked at the night sky. After a while, he lowered his head and looked at the three-furred cat in his arms. "Tell me, am I very useless?" Haruai Flying Bird Library's gift not only gave him the ability of animals, but also the ability to communicate with animals and beasts. Therefore, Haruai Flying Bird Library could communicate with the cat in his arms. The cat that Haruai Flying Bird Library brought from the original world was just an ordinary three-furred cat. It was an old cat that was born on the same day, month, and year as Haruai Flying Bird Library. Because of this, Haruai Flying Bird Library brought the cat with him to the library. For Haruai Flying Bird Library and the three-furred cat, both of them were very important. Haruai Flying Bird Library didn't have the ability to speak his mind in front of his companions, but to the three-furred cat, Haruai Flying Bird Library could speak his mind without hesitation. 16 Nights has extraordinary power. Flying Bird Library also has the ability to imitate godhood. Even Noah Flying Bird Library has almost endless godhood. Flying Bird Library's gift equipment. Compared to them, I am really too weak. Thinking of this, Haruai Flying Bird Library couldn't help but tightly grasp the round wooden sculpture in front of him. That round wooden sculpture was actually a gift from Haruai Flying Bird Library. It was called the Life Catalog, and it could give him the ability of animals and beasts. This gift was very important to Haruai Flying Bird Library, because it was a gift from Haruai Flying Bird Library's father. Father's gift to me must be very special. Haruai Flying Bird Library tightly grasped the gift in front of him and said in a low voice. That's what I've always thought. That's why I've always been confident that I'll be able to play my part by joining this community. But in the end, compared to Noah, 16 Nights, and Flying Bird, I'm at the bottom. Just as he finished speaking, a voice sounded behind Haruai Flying Bird Library. If you think so, then you are wrong. Haruai Flying Bird Library was startled and quickly turned his head to look behind him. There, Noah, who was approaching, looked down at Haruai Hataki from above. Their eyes met, and he said, I didn't expect you to be alone here thinking nonsense. I am not thinking nonsense. Haruai Flying Bird Library seemed to be embarrassed that Noah Flying Bird Library found his dejected look, so he said awkwardly. In fact, right now, among the main members of the community, I am indeed at the bottom. You said it yourself, that is now. Noah Flying Bird Library said very seriously. Even if you are slightly behind the others now, who knows what will happen in the future? In our era, there is a saying that if you are one step ahead, you will not be ahead. Haruai Flying Bird Library said in a rare tone of voice. Since you are already one step ahead of me, then it is not impossible to continue to be ahead of me. But that is only a possibility. Noah Flying Bird Library looked at Haruai Flying Bird Library and sighed. If we are talking about possibilities, then you will directly surpass us and be in the lead. Is there no such possibility? Haruai Flying Bird Library was suddenly speechless. Don't forget, whether it is Black Rabbit or Letitia, they have said it before. Noah Flying Bird Library said to Haruai Flying Bird Library. 16 Nights Reversal, Joe Flying Bird Library, and Haruai Flying Bird Library have the highest level of grace among humans. Since 16 Nights and Flying Bird Library have that level of power, then as the highest level of grace among humans, your life catalog must have power that others have not discovered. Power that others have not discovered. Haruai Flying Bird Library tightened the wooden carving in front of him and fell into silence. Noah Flying Bird Library did not disturb Haruai Flying Bird Library. Together with this quiet girl, they quietly looked at the night sky. The night quietly passed under such circumstances. After a long time, a long time. Chapter 1297. The next day, Noah arrived at No Name's former farm site early in the morning and began to inspect the barren land. Accompanying him were Black Rabbit, Letitia, and Aster. Accompanied by the rustling sound of footsteps, a group of 4 people walked back and forth in this extremely desolate land. Everything in sight was a piece of desolation. Looking at the barren ruins, Noah and Aster aside, Letitia had a sad look on her face. Sure enough, no matter how I look at it, it doesn't look like it can be revived, lady. Lady Letitia, you can't give up. Black Rabbit hurriedly comforted her. At least, the land left for us by our former comrades still exists and has not been taken away. As long as the land is still there, it can be restored. Indeed, now is not the time to be immersed in sadness. Letitia nodded as if she was reflecting, then looked at Noah. Then, Master Noah, do you really have a way to restore the life of this land in a short period of time? Hearing this, Black Rabbit also looked at Noah with anticipation. Today, when everyone was chatting in the discussion room, they inadvertently brought up the issue of the land again. It was not that they liked to talk about this topic, but the entire No Names base was almost all barren land. As long as one lived here, it was inevitable that they would see it every day. Naturally, no one would be happy to see the place where they lived turned into ruins. Under such circumstances, it was inevitable that this topic would often be brought up. After all, to solve the land problem earlier, it would be a good thing for everyone and for the community. So, Letitia told everyone that Noah had a way to solve the land problem. Therefore, Black Rabbit was excited. It couldn't wait to pull Noah to inspect the land. No one doubted Noah's words. It was not only because Noah had no need to lie about this kind of thing, but also because, a month ago, when Noah fought against astral spirit Argel, the scene of him using an endless amount of divine spark bestowment weapons to perform an extremely extravagant projection left a deep impression on everyone. One had to know that even the Black Rabbit, who was the descendant of Sakra, the guardian god of Hinduism, was only bestowed with a weapon that simulated divinity. Thus, on that day, even White Yiksha was scared speechless by Noah's endless divine spark bestowment weapons, let alone the others. And with so many godhead blessings, it wouldn't be strange at all if one of them could be used to revive the land here. In addition, during this period of time, whenever the community encountered difficulties in some aspect, Noah could always take out magical items that could be used in various situations. In everyone's hearts, Noah had long been branded with an almost omnipotent mark. If it weren't for the fact that there was no Doraemon in the box that could take out all kinds of high-tech props from the fourth-dimensional pocket, Noah would probably have been called Doraemon by everyone at this moment. Noah naturally did not know what the others thought of him. He only looked around at the abandoned land that had turned into a barren wasteland and nodded. Restoring the vitality of the land here is not a problem. What I'm thinking about now is how much land to restore. Huh? Black Rabbit's long rabbit ears drooped. Can't it all be restored? It's not that it can't all be restored, but some of it doesn't need to be restored immediately, Noah corrected. After all, in this community, apart from us who need to participate in the game, there are only 120 children who can be used to maintain the land. They wouldn't have the ability to maintain such a huge piece of land, would they? Master is right. Letitia thought for a moment and nodded as well. With the current situation of our community, there is no way to maintain such a large piece of land. If all the land is restored, it will inevitably lead to a large piece of land being abandoned due to the lack of manpower. In that case, we shouldn't waste the precious bestowments and restore all the land. I can use other bestowments to summon a lot of manpower. Noah scratched his cheek. But considering the various problems, before the community is truly developed, there is really no need to restore such a large piece of land. So, for the time being, let's restore a part of it first. Yes. Black Rabbit was energized. I understand. I will choose the part of the land that needs to be restored as soon as possible. Noah and Letitia nodded in unison. Speaking of which, Noah looked around and said with some emotion. Looking at it this way, it's really hard to imagine that this place was still a vibrant farm 3 years ago. To be honest, I'm not very willing to believe it either, Letitia said with a grim expression. I believe that I have lived for a long time and have met many demon kings. In fact, this body of mine was also a sinner in the past. However, the number of times I have met a demon king with such strength can be counted on one hand. Counted on one hand? Noah raised his eyebrows. Do you mean that people with such strength are still people with such strength? Yes. Doesn't Mr. Noah also know such people? Black Rabbit reminded. For example, Lord White Yiksha is not only the astral spirit in charge of the sun's operation, but he is also a Buddhist deity. If that lord has such strength, it's not strange at all. White Yiksha himself has also evaluated that an existence that can turn this land into such a state is probably not inferior to him. Letitia's voice revealed a sense of heaviness. Inferring from this, it has to be at least the strongest demon king, right? Astral spirits. Natural deities. Pure-blooded dragons. These three races were known as the strongest races of the box court. They were terrifying existences that other races could not touch. For example, the astral spirit of the demon star, Argel, who was enslaved by Luos, had a greatly reduced spiritual lattice. Due to Luos's immaturity, he was also wearing a restraining device on his body. Under such repeated weakening, Luos's community was still able to stand firmly at the 5-digit level. If Argel released all of her strength as an astral spirit, let alone a 5-digit number, even a 4-digit number would be ruthlessly left behind by her, right? White Yiksha was once a 2-digit demon king in the past. His strength was terrifyingly strong. Letitia's eyes flickered. An existence that can make White Yiksha face seriously, then the demon king that caused the destruction of our community has to be at least a 3-digit number, right? 3-digit number? Noah muttered softly. That's really troublesome. It was more than troublesome. After all, a 4-digit number was already the level of those famous Asura gods and Buddhas. And a 3-digit number was the peak existence of the god king and main god in various myths and legends. After staying in this world for a month, Noah was no longer as clueless as before about the levels of this world. In Noah's opinion, even if a god slayer came here, it was estimated that he would be between a 4-digit number and a 5-digit number. Existences like Warban and Luo Hao were estimated to be at the 4-digit number level. Moreover, they were not at the peak. In Noah's memory, only the infinite dragon god Orpheus in the world of Demon High School had the qualifications to be comparable to those terrifying existences in the 3-digit number level. In other words, even if Noah went all out and used 2 of the 10 avatars' authority at the same time, he would at most reach a 3-digit number level. Not to mention, using 2 avatars at the same time would cause an extremely heavy burden on the body and mind. Even now, Noah did not have the confidence to be able to use it without any burden. Just as the group was immersed in the assessment of the strength of the demon king that destroyed the community, a panicked voice rang out. Duh! Everyone! Lily shouted as she ran towards them. Something bad has happened. Immediately, everyone's hearts hardened. Chapter 1298. In the meeting room, the main force members of the community were all gathered together. They sat around a table and cast their eyes on an envelope placed on the table. It was an invitation letter. On the invitation letter, there was a wax seal with a picture of 2 goddesses. The picture of 2 goddesses? Noah tilted his head and said. Isn't that the flag of 1,000 Eyes? Yes. The picture of 2 goddesses is the flag of 1,000 Eyes. Black Rabbit answered obediently. Therefore, this invitation letter should be sent by Lord White Yiksha. White Yiksha sent it. Noah blinked. Then it shouldn't be a bad thing, right? Considering Lord White Yiksha's relationship with us, it shouldn't be a bad thing. Ren, as the leader of the community, said with a tone that was not very confident. In the past, Lord White Yiksha would sometimes send us invitations, inviting Black Rabbit to be a judge in some large-scale game of grace. This time, the invitation should be about the same. Mr. 16 Knights and I have come to the same conclusion. Hearing this, Noah's shoulders drooped and he looked at Lily with annoyance. Since it's not a bad thing, Lily, why are you making such a fuss? I'm sorry. Lily's fox ears also drooped down and she was a little dejected. I became nervous when I saw that 1,000 Eyes flag seal on the invitation letter. Hearing Lily's words, everyone smiled bitterly. According to Lily, about 10 minutes ago, she was planning to clean the meeting room when she suddenly found the invitation letter on the table. When she saw the 1,000 Eyes flag as the seal, Lily panicked and called everyone over in a fuss. However, in general, although it was a bit of a fuss, since it was an invitation letter from 1,000 Eyes, it should be necessary to gather everyone for a discussion. The prerequisite was that the invitation letter was important enough. If this invitation was like what Ren said, it was just to invite Black Rabbit to be the judge of a large-scale game of grace, then there was nothing for the rest of them to do. Well, no matter what, it's still an invitation from the ruler of the social class. 16 Knights yawned in boredom. I hope it's not something so boring. Ren Jun. Zhou Yuan Fei now cast his gaze towards Ren Jun. Have you opened this invitation letter and read it? Not yet. Ren shook his head. Considering that it might be an invitation for Black Rabbit to be the judge, I think it's better for Black Rabbit to open it. Is that so? Haruhibu Yaichi nodded and picked up the invitation on the table. If that's the case, then let me open it. The Black Rabbit blinked and said in confusion. According to the development just now, shouldn't the Black Rabbit be the one to open the envelope? It doesn't matter who opens it. Noah sighed. Anyway, since it's an invitation from the ruler of the social class, let's hurry up and see what's inside. Everyone's eyes were focused on Haruhibu Yaichi. At this time, Haruhibu Yaichi had already opened the envelope and took out the invitation letter inside. Immediately after, Haruhibu Yaichi's voice echoed in the entire room. A joint ceremony held by the rulers of the Eastern and Northern Districts. Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony. Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony? Black Rabbit, Zhou Yuan Fei Niao, and Ren were slightly stunned. Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony? Letitia and Lily were also confused, obviously they didn't know about the existence of such a ceremony. Noah and 16 Knights, on the other hand, noticed another important point. A joint ceremony held by the rulers of the Eastern and Northern Districts. The two of them looked at each other. Hey, bro, 16 Knights asked. What do you think? Undoubtedly, you already have the answer in your heart, right? Noah said in annoyance. Why are you still asking me? Let's see if we have the same idea. 16 Knights said this, but his expression was completely like a challenge to Noah. Why don't you tell me what you think? Hearing the conversation between Noah and 16 Knights, everyone's eyes were focused on the two of them. What's wrong? Ren asked with some uncertainty. Is there a problem with this invitation letter? 16 Knights didn't speak, but looked at Noah and motioned for Noah to explain. At this moment, Noah shook his head with a smile, but he still said his thoughts. The problem isn't the invitation letter, but the ceremony itself. After saying this, Noah looked at Ren. Do the Eastern, Southern, Western, and Northern districts often hold joint ceremonies? Although there have been, it's not very common. Ren answered with a serious expression. Although there are many connections between the districts, there is also a kind of healthy competition between the four districts in normal times to promote each other's development. Therefore, under normal circumstances, joint ceremonies between two districts can't be held too frequently. Then, why is the Eastern and Northern districts holding a joint ceremony this time? Noah said. This is the question that 16 Knights and I have. After saying that, Noah took the invitation letter from Haruhibu's hand and explained while looking at it. This time, the main venue of the ceremony is the Northern District. In the ceremony, in addition to the art and crafts exhibition made by the spirits and elves in the Northern District, there will also be a variety of gift games. Rather than saying that the ceremony is jointly held by the two districts, it's better to say that the ceremony is held by the Northern District, and the Eastern District is just a subsidiary. After hearing Noah's words, everyone felt that something was wrong. There is a healthy competition between the districts. Therefore, if the two districts hold a joint ceremony, in order to highlight the characteristics of their respective districts and show the pride of the two districts, it is unlikely that there will be a pattern that is obviously biased towards one side. In other words, there must be a deeper reason for the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony to be held. As for the reason, there's too little information at the moment, so there's no way to speculate. However, if it's not something good, the possibility of us getting involved is very high. Noah tossed the invitation in his hand onto the table. Whether to get involved in this mess or not, it's up to the leader to decide. At this time, everyone's eyes gathered on Ren. Feeling the gaze of so many people present, Ren seemed to be a little nervous, but he still seriously pondered. After a while, he looked at 16 knights with an inquiring look. Receiving Ren's look, 16 knights directly said, "I think it's better to participate. After all, it's an invitation letter personally sent by White Yiksha, who has taken good care of us. If we refuse, it's not worth it." As soon as he finished speaking, 16 knights reversal smiled arrogantly. "Also, this ceremony or whatever it is seems to be very interesting." Jiu Fei Niao and Kazuhito Hikari nodded. They agreed with 16 knights. Obviously, the so-called muddy water is a pursuit for a problem child. Thinking of this, Black Rabbit and Ren didn't want to participate in the fire dragon birth ceremony. In the end, it was Letitia who gave a decisive suggestion. "Actually, the fire dragon birth ceremony is also a good opportunity for us." Letitia looked at Ren. "After all, there will be a variety of gift games in the fire dragon birth ceremony, and it will be jointly held by 2 districts. The quality of the gift games is definitely not low, and the prizes are definitely not low, and our community is now in urgent need of development. Perhaps, in the fire dragon birth ceremony, we can get some good gifts, who knows?" "I also agree with Letitia's words," Jiu Fei Niao quickly said. "What I lack the most right now is grace. Without grace, I won't be able to display much of my combat strength. If I can win a lot of grace during the fire dragon's birth ceremony, it will come in handy when I fight the Demon King." Only then did everyone begin to ponder about it. After a long time, Ren made a decision. Chapter 1299. Box Ting City, 2105380 Outer Gate. In front of a fountain square, a group of no-name members, led by Noah, had arrived. He saw that other than the group from No Name, the rest of the people were also gathered in the fountain square. The main races were humans and beast men. In the East District, the races that occupied the most were these 2 races. The people gathered in the fountain square had only one goal in mind. That was, in front of the fountain square, there was a door that looked like the gate of a solemn castle. The people here all wanted to pass through that door. After a while, the Black Rabbit jumped out of the crowd in front like a real rabbit and came to the front of Noah's group. "Everyone, the number plates for the outer gate have been prepared, please remember to take them." Saying this, Black Rabbit handed out pieces of dark gray metal plates to the people present. It was a metal plate with numbers engraved on the surface. The person who held this metal plate would have the right to pass through the realm gate. The so-called realm gate referred to the system that was set up to move around the huge Box Ting City. It could connect every layer of the realm wall to every outer gate, allowing the people who passed through the outer gate to instantly teleport to the desired outer gate area. In other words, it was a teleportation door. Only by using this door could Noah's group arrive at the North District. Because this world had the surface area of a star, it was very large. Under such circumstances, as the center of this world, the area of Hakata City is boundlessly large, almost comparable to a planet. Because of this, if one wanted to move in such a huge city, the amount of time and labor needed was astonishing. Not to mention other things, just the 2105380 outer gate was about 980,000 kilometers away from the North District. With such a shocking distance, it was naturally impossible to use ordinary methods to reach it. Therefore, to be able to connect the outer gate to the outer gate, the importance of the realm gate was not ordinary. However, in order to activate the realm gate that connected to the outer sect, one would need to spend an astonishing amount of money. Therefore, every person who wanted to use the realm gate had to pay a gold coin issued by 1,000 eyes. For the lowest 7-digit community, a single gold coin issued by 1,000 eyes was a huge expense. Using No Name as an example, this one gold coin could probably support the entire community's food expenses for more than 10 days, right? If it wasn't for the fact that Noah had won a large amount of money from that spoiled brat, No Name would never have used the realm gate to head to the North District to participate in the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. At that time, Ren probably wouldn't make the decision to participate as a group. Instead, he would hide the invitation letter and try his best not to be discovered by the three problem children, retroactive 16 Knights, Joyuan Flying Bird, and Haruai Buyao. Now, with the large amount of money that Noah had won from Luce, it was enough to support the core members of No Name to use the Realm Gate. Of course, he still had to save where he could. Mr. Noah, Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Flying Bird, Miss Yao, Young Master Ren, a total of 5 number tags. Black Rabbit, who gave out the number tags, looked at Letitia and Aster with an embarrassed expression. As for Lady Letitia and Miss Aster, please be brought over by Mr. Noah. Letitia and Aster nodded at the same time, then looked at Noah. Noah understood and reached out his hand to hold Aster's small hand. In the next moment, Aster's body emitted a dazzling light, turning into light particles and gathering in Noah's hand, transforming into the shape of a silver dagger. Noah attached the silver dagger to his waist, then took out the dark gold gift card and aimed it at Letitia. Immediately afterward, Letitia also turned into a burst of light particles and surged into Noah's gift card. Noah then put her away. No matter who used the Realm Gate, they would need to spend a gold coin. The only exception was the gift that belonged to a certain person. Letitia had already signed a subordinate contract with Noah, becoming his gift. Therefore, Noah could use his gift card to keep the gift that belonged to him, the purebred vampire named Letitia. This way, Letitia and Aster would not need to spend the cost of using the Realm Gate. As for Black Rabbit, as a noble, she could use the Realm Gate for free. Not bad, little brother. Reverse 16 Knights said teasingly. Bringing 2 lowly maids with you, that's really blissful. Noah ignored him and turned back to 16 Knights. He looked at the number on the metal plate in his hand. The number, 4,000,000, was written on it. That was the number of the outer gate. With this number tag, Noah could reach the 4000000 outer gate when he passed through the Realm Gate. That was the location of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony in the North District. Although I have thought of using the teleportation gate spell on the Staff of Ains Ur Gong to move to the North District, I don't know where the Fire Dragon birth ritual is going to be held, so I'll just obediently use the Realm Gate here. With this thought, Noah raised his head and looked in the direction of the outer gate. The Realm Gate had always been activated at a fixed time. It would only be opened for personal use in an emergency. Therefore, every time it was activated, those who needed to use the Realm Gate would gather here. Clank. At a certain moment, the gate-like gate flashed with blue and white light, dyeing the entire gate into a strange state like water. The Realm Gate has been activated. Black Rabbit quickly said. Everyone, remember to take the number tag. Otherwise, we don't know where we will be teleported to. With Noah as the leader, everyone nodded and walked towards the Realm Gate. Who dash? When Noah and the others walked out of the Realm Gate, a hot wind with a trace of temperature whistled past, sweeping across everyone's cheeks. Then, the scene in front of them was imprinted in everyone's eyes. Looking at the scene in front of them, Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, Jiu Yufei, and Haruhito Masaaki were all stunned. Especially Jiu Fei Niao, who sucked in a breath of cold air. A red wall? Yes. What entered the eyes of the group was a huge red realm wall. In Hakata City, in addition to the 7 circular realm walls that separated each level, there were 2 huge realm walls that were like diagonal lines that separated the entire Hakata City into 4 districts. Those 4 districts were the East, West, South, and North districts. The huge red realm wall in front of them was the realm wall that separated the East District and the North District. On the boundary wall, one could see monuments carved out of ores, arches of Gothic steeples that seemed to have been chiseled into buildings, and a huge triumphal arch that was formed by the combination of 2 outer doors that stood on the outer wall. In front of Noah and the others who were standing in front of the realm wall, there was a corridor that was decorated with colorful carved glass. In the cloister, there were actually candlesticks swaggering along the street with 2 feet, and people wearing all kinds of clothes like clowns coming and going, creating an extraordinarily lively scene. A walking candlesticks. Jiu Yufei's eyes flashed with surprise as she pointed at the walking candlesticks and pulled Haruhito Masaaki's hand. Look! There's a walking candlesticks. It's true. Haruhito Masaaki said in surprise. It's completely different from the East District. It feels like we've entered another world. The main thing is that we're holding a ceremony now, and the culture in the North District is indeed different from the East District. Ren explained. It's not time for the ceremony to start yet, but in a few days, it will probably be even more lively, right? 16 Knights Reversal's emotions were immediately stirred up. In any case, let's look around first. Everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 1300. Hey hey. Look. Look over there. Isn't that a rabbit? Where? It's really a rabbit. Why would a Hakata noble come to the lowest 7-digit level? To actually be able to see you two in the 7-digit level. We are so lucky. In the corridor decorated with red bricks and engraved glass, Noah and his group walked in the middle of the street while being pointed at by the people around them. It could be said that they had suddenly become the center of attention. Of course, in reality, only Black Rabbit was the center of attention. The rest of them did not receive any attention. Black Rabbit, who was walking in the middle of the crowd, endured the gazes from all directions. Although it looked calm on the surface, its pair of long rabbit ears drooped down heavily. Obviously, the gazes from all directions made Black Rabbit feel uneasy. Even though it had served as a referee for many large-scale bestowal games and was usually the center of attention, in the Northern District, there were very few people who knew of Black Rabbit's existence. It was even more impossible for normal citizens to know that you too, a Hakata noble, would stay in a community at the lowest level. Not to mention, this community did not have a flag or a name. As a famous aristocrat of Hakata, if others were to find out that Black Rabbit was staying in a community that did not even have a flag or a name, it would not only be Black Rabbit, but even no name would suffer a lot of grief, right? Thinking about how the people around it were looking at it with all kinds of surprised gazes, and how when they knew that it was no name, these surprised gazes would turn into shock and surprise, Black Rabbit felt a wave of unease. Fortunately, such a situation did not happen. Even if the people in the Northern District were extremely surprised that a Hakata noble would come to the lowest level, because it was a ceremony, the residents seemed to think that Black Rabbit was only here to join in the fun, or was invited to be a referee for various bestowal games. Not long after, the degree of surprise decreased by a lot. Only then did Black Rabbit let out a sigh of relief, its pair of drooping rabbit ears perked up again. That's great, I thought there would be some unnecessary disputes. What? Do you feel uncomfortable with the gazes of the people around you? 16 Knights asked casually. Seeing that you've always pretended to be a bunny girl to please me, as long as you say the word, I'll help you chase everyone here away. Please don't. If we let Mr. Problem Child take action, it will definitely become the situation that Black Rabbit doesn't want to see the most. Black Rabbit's reaction was intense as it shouted. Also, the Black Rabbit has never pretended to be a rabbit girl to please Mr. 16 Knights. Please don't talk nonsense so seriously. Haruhi Hikari looked at Black Rabbit in disbelief. You've never done it before. Why are you suspicious? Black Rabbit became even more agitated. I've never pretended to be a bunny girl. Isn't everyone clear about this? Hearing this, everyone immediately focused their gazes on Black Rabbit. Although he didn't dress up as a rabbit girl, the Black Rabbit's sexy mini dress was still a stimulus for ordinary people. Thus, the 16th Night Reversal directly left behind such a sentence. Although you're not a bunny girl, your usual outfit is quite embarrassing. Don't say it's embarrassing. Black Rabbit pulled out a paper fan from somewhere and slapped 16 Knights on the head with a loud, "pa" sound. Mr. 16 Knights is a big idiot. Seeing Black Rabbit, Haruhi Pikari, and the 16th night reversal happily fooling around, Ren couldn't help but smile bitterly and look to the other side. Look! Lanterns that can fly. Jiao Fei now used her sparkling eyes to look at a group of floating lanterns not far away as she tugged at Noah's clothes with all her might. Look! Quick, look! I'm looking. Noah could only let Jitaka do whatever she wanted with an innocent face. So, stop pulling my clothes, or they'll fall off. If it was a normal day, Jitaka, who had an extraordinary background, would definitely not continue to pester him due to her manners. However, today, Jitaka's mood was unusually high as she continued to pester Noah. Not only are there walking candlesticks, there are even flying lanterns. The Northern District is really a place filled with dreams. Jitaka said with anticipation. I wonder if there's a pumpkin-headed monster. It's the kind of monster that appears in that festival called Want Something. You mean the jack-o'-lantern, right? Noah agreed with a helpless expression. It's the pumpkin monster that appears in Halloween. Yes. It's Halloween. Jitaka nodded repeatedly. The festival in the Northern District is very similar to that. It's the right choice to come here. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. Could it be that you really like Halloween? Not really, it's just that I heard about it when I was young and thought it was very beautiful. Jitaka said absent-mindedly. After all, the place where I used to live was really boring. Also, I was locked up in a dormitory because I could control people's hearts. I didn't have the chance to participate in such a beautiful event. Then you should enjoy it. Noah shrugged and looked at Ren. Where should we go after this? Ren did not expect Noah to suddenly throw a question at him. After pondering for a while, he looked at Noah. If it's possible, I would like to say hello to Salamandra first. Salamandra? Noah was puzzled. What's that? A community? Yes. Ren nodded. In the Northern District, Salamandra is a very famous community. Although there aren't many members with outstanding talents, they rely on the widespread maintenance of the wyvern bloodline to increase the strength of their organization. Not only do they have many wyvern-type wyverns that dominate the air, they also have many powerful fire lizards and humanoid fire dragons. They have a very strong battle strength. Their base is located in the outer gate of the 54545 sect. It's a 5-digit community with a flaming dragon as its flag. 5-digit? Noah was surprised. Do you know anyone in such a high-class community? Actually, in the past, Salamandra had formed an alliance with our community. Ren's expression became a little gloomy. However, ever since our community suffered a devastating blow and was unable to become no-name, Salamandra unilaterally abandoned the alliance. Until now, we have not contacted each other for 3 years. Is that so? Noah nodded and casually asked. Then you don't resent Salamandra? Instead, you want to greet them? You can't say that I resent them, right? Ren said hesitantly. Our community has already declined. There is no benefit in continuing to associate with us. It's not incomprehensible to break the alliance. Kicking them away as soon as they are no longer of any use proves that all the relationships in the past were only built on benefits. Noah glanced at Ren. There is no reason to trust such a person, and they will not lend us a helping hand at a critical time. If you can break it off, then break it off earlier. Ren was suddenly speechless. Seeing Ren like this, Noah secretly muttered in his heart. He's just a child. Isn't this too strict on him? Just as Noah was reflecting, Black Rabbit's exasperated voice rang out. These problematic children. Hearing Black Rabbit's exasperated voice, Noah and Ren were stunned at the same time. They turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Then, a pair of eyes widened. Oh! What a beautiful scenery. That's right. I finally found a scenery that is more beautiful than the night sky in Hakata. In the East District, there is no such scenery at all. Leisurely having such a conversation, at the top of a steeple made of stained glass, 16 Knights Retroactive, Jiu Yuasuka, and Haruai Hiroyuki occupied that place with a look of admiration. Such a conspicuous scene attracted the attention of the surrounding residents. A commotion suddenly occurred. Chapter 1301. What? What are they doing? They're actually climbing on top of the display, isn't that too rude? Which community are they from? Where's the military police? Hurry up and tell the military police to catch them. Looking at 16 knights, Kubo Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi climbing to the top of the stained glass tower, the people on the street were pointing at them, causing quite a commotion. It couldn't be helped. Retroactive 16 Knights, Joyuen Flying Bird, and Haruai Tribe were simply too good at picking a location. As mentioned before, in this fire dragon birth ceremony, apart from holding all kinds of bestowment games, there would also be an art exhibition and judging meeting made by the spirits and elves in the North District. At this moment, the stained glass spire occupied by 16 Knights Retrograde, Kubo Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi was one of the handicrafts for the exhibition. Perhaps they had considered the fact that it would take up too much space, which was why the minaret was placed on the street. However, the three problem children climbed on top of other people's handicrafts to sightsee. This situation can no longer be described as impolite. If they were not careful and broke the spire, that would be big trouble. Why? 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 Ren was dumbfounded as he shouted. Why did they go there? Not to mention Ren, even the corners of Noah's eyes were twitching. Those guys, they're really a bunch of fearless problem children. Even Noah and Ren were like this. Haidai was even more anxious. You guys hurry up and come down. Haidai shouted in panic. If you break that spire, it won't be as simple as compensation, you might even be kicked out of the ceremony. However, Black Rabbit's loud cry was ignored by 16 knights, Joyuen Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi. They continued to praise the beautiful scenery around them and didn't care at all about the situation below that was becoming more and more chaotic. This isn't good. Ren's face turned green. If this continues, we might really attract the military police who are in charge of maintaining order. At that time, everyone would inevitably be implicated and punished together. The most serious consequence was that they might be banned from participating in the fire dragon birth ceremony and be kicked back to the East District. Haidai also realized this and clenched his fists in excitement. In this instant, the Black Rabbit's head of sky blue waist-length hair suddenly trembled. From top to bottom, it suddenly turned a pink color. Her long pink hair swayed beautifully in the breeze, sparkling like moonlight, attracting the gazes of everyone around her, revealing expressions of amazement. This change also attracted the attention of 16 knights, Kiyoshi Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi, who were enjoying the scenery on top of the spire. Not good. Haruhibu's mouth opened slightly. Haidai is angry. Yes. Haidai was angry. Haidai had the physical characteristic of turning her hair, ears, and tail pink when she used her power or when her emotions changed. Now that Haidai's sky blue waist-length hair turned pink, it meant that this girl was either using her power, or a certain emotion in her heart had reached its peak. In this situation, there was no need to explain what emotion caused Haidai's hair to turn pink. Immediately, Haidai trembled and squeezed out a voice from his mouth. You all of the questions from the group. When Haidai's rage value reached the maximum, Haidai's body crouched and like a cannonball, he shot up into the sky and violently shot towards 16th Knights, Jiu Yuanao, and Haruhibu's direction. The price of angering Haidai, this time, I'll let you guys have a taste of it. Seeing Haidai roaring and shooting towards them at an astonishing speed, Jiu Yuanao and Haruhibu's hearts skipped a beat. Coming. Run. Run. Without any hesitation, Haruhibu grabbed Jiu Yuanao and leaped down with the speed of a cheetah. What? You want to play hide-and-seek with me? Hide-I. 16th Knights laughed excitedly and arrogantly. Interesting. Let's play then. After saying this, 16 Knights reverse shot off in another direction with a speed that was absolutely not inferior to the Black Rabbit's. It was as if he was a bullet that had left the barrel. Even in such a situation, 16 Knights reverse still carried out the style of the Brain faction. The direction he chose was completely opposite to Jiu Yuanao and Haruhibu's direction. Haidai, who had rushed up to the steeple, could only land on the steeple. He first glanced at Jiu Yuanao and Haruhibu's direction, then at 16th Knights. After a while, he seemed to have made a decision. He turned around and looked at Noah below. Mr. Noah, please go after Miss Flying Bird and Miss Saya. I'll leave the troublesome adult child to Haidai. After saying that, the Black Rabbit also turned into a bullet that was shot out of the barrel. Like an arrow that left the bow, it rushed in the direction where 16 Knights disappeared. Wait. Noah only had time to raise his hand towards the steeple before Haidai disappeared. Noah could only withdraw his hand with a speechless expression and let out a helpless sigh. I haven't agreed yet. Even though that was what he said, Noah could not let Jiu Yuanao and Haruhibu continue to mess around. As expected, I'll only run into all sorts of trouble when I'm with these three. My premonition when I first came to this world is so accurate that it's infuriating. If only I had just left at that time. After saying that, Noah turned into a ray of light and flew towards Jiu Yuanao and Haruhibu's direction. He left, yeah, speaking of which, he's so fast. Which community are they from? Could it be someone from the upper echelons? All of a sudden, the entire street was filled with people talking about it. Among the crowd, Ren stood there in a daze and did not come back to his senses for a long time. At that moment, there was only one thought left in Ren's mind. What should I do? As time passed, the sky was slowly dyed with the color of dusk. The setting sun hung high in the sky, sprinkling countless rays of light onto the earth, dyeing the entire land a fiery red color. In such a fiery red sky, Haruhibu, who was carrying Jiu Yuanao, was surrounded by whirlwinds. It was as if he was being carried by a whirlwind as he flew across the sky. Jiu Yuanao, who was being carried by Haruhibu, was a little surprised. Haruhibu-san. How can you fly? Hearing that, Haruhibu was still looking forward, but there was a slight smile on his face. The white yiksha has a griffin that can control whirlwinds. I met it in a game of grace and became friends with it. Therefore, Haruhibu Yaichi's life catalog absorbed the griffin's ability, allowing Haruhibu Yaichi to gain the ability to control whirlwinds. So powerful. Jiu Yuanao said happily. If that's the case, we can leave the Black Rabbit behind and go somewhere else to play. However, just as he finished speaking, a voice that was not a smile entered the ears of Jiu Fei Niao and Haruna Buyao. If you want to play, then stay here and play with me. Why go somewhere else? The moment he finished speaking, golden ripples began to appear in the space around Kudo Yukioshi and Haruna Buyao. They were like water ripples, appearing one after another. Seeing the golden ripples, Jiu Yuanao and Haruhibu Yao were shocked. That is, before Jiu Isuk and Harui Buyao could finish their words, silver chains with golden light flowing on their surface suddenly swept out from the golden ripples. They flashed through the air one by one, like agile pythons, circling towards the two girls from all directions. Chapter 1302. Clang, clang, clang. Amidst the clanging sounds of metal clashing against metal, numerous silver chains with different wedges at the front and golden light flowing all over moved nimbly in the air. In an instant, they formed an encirclement net, trapping Kiyoshi and Harui Buyao within. Harui Hiroyuki, who was holding Komodo, quickly controlled the whirlwind to stop in the middle of the whistling wind. He floated in the air and looked around. The chains that came out from the golden ripples seemed to form a huge chain cage, trapping Juyu-Asuk and Kasumi inside. Hovering in the air, Haruhi Hiroyuki was like a bird locked in a cage made of chains. He didn't know what to do. Under such circumstances, the voice that sounded like a laugh yet not a laugh sounded once again. If that's the case, you won't be able to escape, right? Hearing this voice, Kiyoshi and Haruhi Biao raised their heads at the same time and looked in front of them. There, Noah seemed to be descending from the heavens. With a slow speed, he floated down bit by bit until he was at the same height as Kiyoshi Asuka and Haruhi Biao. In the eyes of Kyu and Haruhi Biao, who had become caged birds, that figure was simply synonymous with the Demon King. In fact, even though Noah wasn't like the Demon King in the box court who could use his authority as the organizer to force others into his game of bestowment, Kiyoshi and Haruhibu Yaichi were well aware of how frightening Noah was. They knew that Noah was definitely much more difficult to deal with than the Demon King. As for why, the reason was very simple. Even if it was a Demon King, if someone else found a way to defeat him, he could only die with regret. However, Noah, who had endless blessings and all of them were of the Godhead level, could use all kinds of blessings to deal with all kinds of situations. In other words, the man named Noah had no weaknesses. No matter what kind of methods his opponent used, this man would always be able to deal with them with endless gifts. He could even specifically target his opponent's weakness and take out the corresponding weapons and tools. Having such a person as an opponent was even worse than the Demon King. If it was 16 knights, perhaps he could use brute force to deal with the enemy. But Kiyoshi and Haruhi Biao didn't have the strength to fight against 16 knights. At least, not now. Seeing Noah descending from the sky, Kiyoshi and Haruhi Biao bit their lips at the same time and looked at Noah with resentment and regret. I didn't expect there to be a traitor here. Betraying one's companions is an eternal sin. Seeing Kyuki Asuka and Haruhibu Yaichi talking as if everything was Noah's fault, Noah rolled his eyes. Sorry, I don't think I'm a traitor, he said. You call this not betraying me? Joyuan Bird glared at Noah and said loudly. Aren't we companions? In the sense of community, we are indeed companions. Noah's mouth twitched. But, if you're referring to the companions who prank and cause trouble, then I'm sorry, but please don't count me in. Ugh. Haruhi Biao puffed up his cheeks. You traitor. Am I really the villain now? Noah rubbed his forehead, then looked up and said weakly. Forget it, a villain is a villain then. Then, as a villain, I'll say something as usual. Noah looked at Haruhi Biao and smiled. If you surrender now, I'll leave you with a complete corpse. No. Haruhi Biao refused at the same time. Surrender to you? Haruhi Biao said righteously. Then I'd rather die. We won't give up. Haruhi Biao looked like a righteous comrade and stared at Noah. In order to make fun of Black Rabbit, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we'll do it. Hearing this, Noah finally couldn't help but complain. Aren't your lives too worthless? The moment he finished speaking, a whirlwind suddenly shook and turned into a violent storm, sweeping toward Noah. Haruhi Biao took advantage of the time when Noah was complaining and suddenly released a whirlwind, making the strong whirlwind like an invisible wave, violently rushing toward him. You want to attack? Who's the villain? Noah shouted as if he couldn't stand it anymore, but his actions weren't slow at all. He turned around and kicked the whirlwind violently. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled explosion, the invisible whirlwind was directly crushed by Noah's kick, scattering into a gentle breeze that spread in all directions. However, at this moment, a small bead suddenly shot over from the front and was imprinted in the eyes of Noah, who had kicked the whirlwind into smithereens. Seeing that bead, Noah narrowed his eyes and retreated quickly without any hesitation. Almost at the same time, Haruhi Biao's cold voice sounded. Explode! Under the command of the awe-inspiring voice, the gift of simulated godhood was bestowed upon the small bead. When they decided to participate in the fire dragon's birth ceremony, Haruai Buyao bought some gifts in the name of community. Those gifts, for ordinary people, could at most make life slightly more convenient. For example, beads that could emit fire, branches that could produce water, and so on. These were the lowest gifts, and Haruai Buyao bought a lot of them. And these gifts were all prepared for Haruai Buyao. Even if it could only make life slightly more convenient, in the hands of Haruai Buyao who could use language to give simulated divinity, it would transform into a powerful gift. In order to obtain a big harvest in the fire dragon's birth ceremony, Haruai Buyao prepared these gifts for Haruai Buyao, hoping that Haruai Buyao could win the gift game and use the gifts to develop the community. Haruai Buyao naturally didn't reject these gifts in consideration of the community. Now, the bead that Haruai Buyao threw out was a gift that could cause a small explosion. As a result, after being given the simulated divinity, the ordinary beads suddenly flashed with a dazzling light, and the soul inside suddenly expanded. In the next moment, an astonishing explosion occurred in the entire cage made of chains, setting off tumbling waves of fire that dyed the sky red. Haruai Buyao, who was holding Haruai Buyao, controlled the whirlwind to blow away the incoming waves of fire while retreating continuously. The tip of his nose was dripping with cold sweat. Fei. Buyao. Aren't you going too far? What can I do? I didn't know that the power of the simulated divinity would reach such a level. Haruai Buyao was also a little flustered, but her strong self-esteem made her pretend to be calm. But, if the opponent is that man, this level of power won't be a problem. Haruai Buyao nodded and agreed with Haruai Buyao's words. With Noah's strength, this level of power wouldn't be a problem. So, we should hurry and escape from here. Before Haruai Hiroyuki could finish his sentence, the familiar voice sounded again. Escape? You have to be able to escape first. With such a voice, a figure rushed out like a gust of wind from the rolling waves of fire in front of him. He directly blew away the waves of fire and violently rushed to the front of Haruai Hiroyuki, who was holding Koyuki Hiroyuki. Haruai Buyao was shocked, and just as he was about to move, Noah's figure had already flashed in front of him. Almost reflexively, Haruai Buyao kicked at Noah, who had flashed in front of him, bringing with it a whistling sound. In response, Noah just moved his body sideways and flashed behind Haruai Buyao, avoiding the girl's fierce kick. It should be mentioned here. Noah's following actions were completely subconscious and not intentional. Noah raised one hand and slapped Haruai Buyao's delicate butt. Pa! When the crisp sound was heard, the surroundings became quiet. Chapter 1303. Silence. There was a deathly silence. The entire space, which had been filled with the smell of gunpowder because of the shocking explosion, instantly quieted down, and was replaced by a strange atmosphere. Feeling the pain from his buttocks, Haruai Hiroyuki's entire body stiffened, and even his mouth was slightly open. Obviously, Noah's slap had stunned Haruai Hiroyuki. Noah, who had flashed behind Haruai Hiroyuki and slapped his buttocks heavily, was also frozen in place. His palm simply stayed on Haruai Hiroyuki's buttocks due to excessive shock, and he did not react for a long time. Haruai Hiroyuki, who had lived to this day for a full 14 years, had never let anyone touch his buttocks. Now, in a mischievous fight, he was hit hard by a companion of the opposite sex. It would be strange if he could react. As a result, Haruai Hiroyuki was stunned for a long time before he slowly turned his head and looked at Noah, who was floating behind him. His pretty face was still as emotionless and quiet as before, but there was a faint blush on his pink cheeks. As for Haruai Hiroyuki's eyes, he was completely in disbelief. She couldn't believe that she had been slapped on the butt by Noah in such a situation. Facing Haruai Hiroyuki's eyes full of disbelief, Noah only felt his head go numb, and then he realized that his hand, which was still on Haruai Hiroyuki's buttocks, was continuously giving him a wonderful touch. Haruai Hiroyuki was actually wearing slightly thick shorts, and a long sleeveless shirt that covered his buttocks, so Noah could put his hand on it through several layers of cloth, but a girl's body was just so soft. Even though there were several layers of cloth, Noah could still feel a trace of wonderful touch. However, this wonderful touch finally caused Noah to react. He hurriedly withdrew his hand and stuttered, which was a rare sight. I didn't do it on purpose." Hearing this, Haruhibu Yaichi looked straight at Noah. There was no change in his expression, but his cheeks were still a little red. After a while, Noah heard Haruhibu's whisper. It was so soft that it could be blown away by a gust of wind. Noah's heart was suddenly filled with an indescribable emotion. That kind of emotion was called embarrassment. It must be mentioned here again that Noah really didn't do it on purpose. He just casually slapped it down. After all, with Haruhi Hiroyuki's strength, it was impossible for him to make Noah use his full strength. In addition, this kind of playful fight made Noah feel a little dispirited. That was why he casually slapped it down. Who would have thought that this shot would be so accurate? So, Noah really didn't do it on purpose. However, it was useless to explain anything now. This was because even the distant bird looked at Noah with disdain as if it was looking at an idiot. "So you're such a frivolous person?" Noah choked and was almost speechless. At this time, Haruhibu Yaichi had already taken Juhibu Yaichi and manipulated the whirlwind to distance themselves from Noah. Then, he looked at Noah and narrowed his eyes. "Are you satisfied now? Can you let us go now?" Noah's mouth twitched. What kind of words was that? Why did it sound like Noah purposely chased after these two girls just to touch Haruhibu Yaichi's butt? This was definitely a big misunderstanding. In the end, isn't this a boring prank made by you two? Noah could only swallow his anger and looked at Juhibu Yaichi and Haruhibu Yaichi's eyes. "Now obediently come back with me, or else. Haruhibu Yaichi blinked as if he wanted to see Noah's thoughts. He looked straight at Noah. "Or else, are you going to continue touching me? Are you still planning to do that?" Juhibu Yaichi looked at Noah with more and more contempt. "If that's the case, then you'll have to go through me first." After saying that, Juhibu Yaichi held a few different colored beads in her hand. Originally, Juhibu Yaichi didn't want to waste the gifts that she was going to use during the fire dragon's birth ceremony. However, if Noah wanted to continue doing bad things to Haruhibu Yaichi, then Juhibu Yaichi wouldn't continue hiding them. In any case, these blessings were only of a very common level. With No Name's current financial ability, he could more or less afford to waste them. Still, Zhou and Fei Niao did not feel that these gifts could do anything to Noah after his might light simulated the bestowment of divinity. Being guarded by Juhibu Yaichi and Haruhibu Yaichi, Noah opened and closed his mouth. In the end, he gave up and said that sentence. That's right. If you don't want to surrender here, I'll beat each of you 10 times when I catch you." Now, let alone Haruhibu Yaichi, even Juhibu Yaichi couldn't stay calm. Even if it was a problem child, as long as it was a proper girl, she wouldn't want to be spanked by someone of the opposite sex. Under such circumstances, Juhibu Yaichi and Haruhibu Yaichi, who didn't want to retreat, finally started to retreat. "Hey, Juhibu Yaichi," Haruhibu Yaichi said. "Why don't we surrender?" It was the first time in history that Haruhibu Yaichi, who was quiet on the outside and stubborn on the inside, was willing to surrender. However, Juhibu Yaichi also had the same idea. Unfortunately, Ancient Flying Bird's excessive pride caused it to struggle a little. Don't give up so easily, Haruhibu-san." Juhibu Yaichi looked at Noah, who had an expression of desperation, and stammered. "Perhaps, we can find a chance to escape. Who knows?" In other words, Juhibu Yaichi intends to continue the challenge, right? Haruhibu Yaichi reminded her out of kindness. "If you're caught, you'll be spanked 10 times. Juhibu Yaichi's courage withered. Even Haruhibu Yayoi was afraid of the consequences, not to mention the ancient birds that had been summoned to Hakata from the conservative Showa era. If Jehibu Yai-chi was the one who was spanked by Noah in such a shameful place, she might even think of making Noah take responsibility. Thinking of this, Jehibu Yai-chi became timid. Even if it's Noah, he wouldn't be so cruel, right? Jehibu Yai-chi's voice revealed her lack of confidence. Although he treated you like that just now, it should be an unconscious action. Noah wouldn't do such a thing. Perhaps? Haruhibu Yai-chi said in a low voice. But, I feel that compared to this, Noah is more of a man of his words. Do you want to try, Jehibu? Jehibu Yai-chi finally fell silent. After a while, the two girls cast resentful gazes at Noah at the same time. I admit defeat this time. Although I'm unwilling, I don't want to be spanked again. Saying this, Jehibu Yai-chi and Haruhibu Yai-chi finally chose to surrender. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. That's it. Following such a voice, shadows suddenly flew over from all directions, surrounding Noah, Komodo Asuka, and Haruhibe Masaaki's group of people in the chain cage. Noah, Jehibu Yai-chi, and Haruhibu Yai-chi were all stunned, then raised their heads and looked at their surroundings. In an instant, the three of them saw it. Outside the cage made of chains, there were beasts flapping their wings and hovering in the air, surrounding the entire chain cage. Those beasts flapping their wings were xenomorphs that looked like pterosaurs, but their bodies were covered with scales like lizards. In the hands of these pterosaurs, there was a flag with a flaming dragon pattern. A pterosaur that had absolute control of the air. A community with a flaming dragon pattern as its flag. These were all characteristics that Noah had heard of not long ago. And it was from Ren. Salamandra. Chapter 1304. Stratum Dominator. This title seemed to refer to every stratum dominator in the box court, but in fact, it was the guardian of the box court's order. It was also a system set up to promote the growth of the lower-level community. In the east, south, west, and north, there were stratum dominators in each of the 4 regions. For example, the stratum dominator in the east was a star spirit and a god. In the past, it was the White Yiksha, who used to be a demon king in the double digits. Stratum dominators like the White Yiksha had a lot of responsibilities. The most important task was to be responsible for the division and transfer of land in the box court, or to hold a gift game to test whether the lower-level community was qualified to move to a higher stratum, and so on. And when the natural disaster that disturbed the order, which was the demon king of the box court, appeared, as the guardian of order, the stratum dominators had the obligation to be the first to fight. It could be said that the stratum dominators existed to maintain the peace and order of the box court. For this reason, the stratum dominators were given all kinds of rights. Among them, there was the authority of the organizer like the demon king. However, there was not only one stratum dominator in each region. For example, the stratum dominators in the north were held by the leaders of multiple communities. The leader of the community called Salamandra was one of the stratum dominators in the north. This community had formed an alliance with No Name in the past, but after No Name met with misfortune, it unilaterally abandoned the alliance. Its base was located in the 54545 outer gate of the north. In the past, Salamandra was once a 4-digit community. However, since No Name met with misfortune 3 years ago, the body of the former leader of Salamandra began to have problems. Under the influence of the internal dispute over the successor, it was finally demoted to 5 digits. It must be known that although there was only a difference of 1 stratum between a 4-digit and a 5-digit number, the difference between this stratum was like heaven and earth. The box court that was divided into 7 stratums was divided into upper, middle, and lower stratum according to the difference in stratum and level. Among them, 6-digit and 7-digit numbers were divided into the lower stratum, 5-digit numbers were divided into the middle stratum, and only 1-digit, 2-digit, 3-digit, and 4-digit numbers were divided into the upper stratum. Of course, the difference between stratums was also very big. However, the difference between the upper, middle, and lower levels could be described as the difference between heaven and earth. If it wasn't for the fact that the requirement to become a tier dominator was only 5 digits, Salamandra might have been given a bye. Even so, Salamandra was still one of the top communities in the Northern District. In terms of influence and strength, Salamandra was even above Perseus. This time, at the lowest level of the Northern District, the barrier between the Eastern and Northern Districts, one of the organizers of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony was Salamandra. During this time, in order to maintain the security of the festival, Salamandra's military police had been stationed outside the 4 Million Gate, waiting for action at any time. After 16 nights retrograde, Kyuka Asaka and Haruhito Masaaki occupied the art pieces of the festival to enjoy the scenery. The military police of Salamandra were alerted. After that, Kyuka Asaka used the aura of might to imitate the godhood in her hands, causing a huge explosion. In this way, it was impossible not to attract the attention of Salamandra's military police. Thus, under the escort of Salamandra's military police, Noah, Kyuka Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki were sent to the headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. If Noah's group wanted to resist, then even if it was Salamandra's military police, with Noah holding the line, they wouldn't be able to do anything to Kyuka Asaka and Haruhito Masaaki. However, their goal this time wasn't to start a war, but to participate in the various gift games held in the Northern District, and win all kinds of gifts as prizes. In order to not lose the qualifications to participate in the games, Noah, Kyuka Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki were taken away without any resistance and brought to the headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. However, here, Noah's group met some unexpected people. I was wondering who had the guts to cause trouble at the ceremony held jointly by the Northern and Eastern Districts. While saying this, Byakuya Yiksha, who was wearing a kimono and holding a paper fan with 2 Valkyries looking at each other, looked at Noah, Kyuka Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki with an unpleasant expression. So it's you, Byakuya Yiksha. Kyuka Asaka was startled at first, then she was surprised. Why are you here? Is it strange that I'm here? Byakuya Yiksha became even more annoyed. As I said, this ceremony is held jointly by the Northern and Eastern Districts. As the ruler of the Eastern District, it would be strange if I didn't come, right? Speaking of this, Byakuya Yiksha seemed to have remembered something and looked at Noah with dissatisfaction. Undoubtedly, I was the one who sent you the invitation, but you didn't even come to visit me and came to the Northern District. Isn't that a bit rude? It can't be helped. Noah crossed his arms and glanced at Byakuya Yiksha. We're here to enjoy the ceremony, not to get involved in unnecessary trouble. What do you mean? Byakuya Yiksha frowned, his face tensed up, and said very seriously. Do I look like I'm going to cause trouble for you? Noah didn't answer immediately, but stared at Byakuya Yiksha and said without blinking. Don't tell me you don't have any trouble to throw at us. As early as the beginning, Noah and 16 Knights discovered that this Fire Dragon birth ceremony was definitely not as simple as a simple ceremony. There must be some deeper problems hidden in it. In order not to get involved in this mess, Noah didn't want to greet Byakuya Yiksha and brought the members of the community to the Northern District without saying a word. If there was nothing, with Byakuya Yiksha's personality, he definitely wouldn't care about such a small problem. But now, since Byakuya Yiksha specially brought up this matter, it proved that Noah's concerns were not wrong. Under such circumstances, Byakuya Yiksha also understood that his thoughts had been seen through. His tense face slowly relaxed, and he spread his hands helplessly. Well, if you can't even guess something of this level, then you can't use the slogan, "Down with the Demon King," as the purpose of the community. As soon as he said this, a somewhat heavy and extremely stern voice sounded. It's just arrogant words used by nameless people in the lower class to decorate themselves. Are the rulers of the Eastern District so naive to believe such words? The sudden cynicism and ridicule changed the atmosphere of the entire space. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly, raised his head, and looked forward. He saw a group of people walking in an orderly manner in the corridor in front of the hall. It was a group of soldiers who looked like lizards and a group of guards with slightly darker skin. 2 people led the group. One of them was a stern-looking man with antlers on his head. The cynicism just now came from this person. The other was a girl about 11 or 12 years old. She was a young girl with bright red hair tied to her head. She wore a crown made of dragon horns and a brightly colored dress that made her look like a dancer. This group of people came in front of Noah and the others together and stopped not far in front of Noah and the others. Let me introduce you. The first to break the silence was Byakuka Yiksha. He pointed at the man with the paper fan in his hand and said, Mandela Telderek, the trusted aide of the leader of the 5-digit community, Salamandra, in the Northern District. He is also the elder brother of the current leader. With that, Byakuka Yiksha pointed at the young girl about 11 or 12 years old. This is the current leader of Salamandra, Sandora Telderek. Chapter 1305. Under Byakuya's introduction, Noah, Kubo Asaka, and Haruhide Masaaki's gazes all fell on Shadora, brazenly sizing her up. After all, including Noah, no one thought that the leader of Salamandra, one of the rulers of the North District, would be such a young child. However, Byakuya, the ruler of the East District, looked even younger than Shadora. But in reality, this former demon king had lived longer than anyone else. Therefore, it was very likely that this girl named Shadora was not as young as she appeared to be. That was not necessarily the case. Only Noah could be sure that Shadora was different from Byakuya. She should be the type that looked exactly the same as her actual age. As for why, Noah could detect a trace of nervousness from the girl named Shadora's eyes. Even so, Shadora still forced herself to remain calm and greeted Noah's group with a gentle and generous smile. Hello everyone from No Name, I am Shadora from Salamandra. I am very happy to be able to see my former allies. Former allies? Jiu Yuao was slightly startled. Former allies? Haruhide Masaaki was also somewhat confused. What? You don't know? Byakuya said in surprise. Before your community was attacked by the Demon King, you had formed an alliance with Salamandra. Didn't Kurorobi tell you? Jiu Yuao and Haruhide Masaaki's eyes widened in surprise. The two girls really didn't know about this. However, this wasn't something that was worth Jiu Yuao and Haruhide Masaaki's concern. Former allies? Haruhide Masaaki tilted his head thoughtfully. In other words, that alliance has been cancelled. As soon as this sentence was said, the atmosphere suddenly became a bit dangerous. Because, other than Jiu Yuao and Haruhide Masaaki, everyone else knew the secret. So, Noah spilled the beans without holding anything back. No Name and Salamandra's alliance was unilaterally abolished by Salamandra after No Name was attacked by the Demon King. Jiu Yuao and Haruhide Masaaki's expression suddenly changed. Unilaterally? Jiu Yuao glanced at Shadora and Mandela, then looked away as if she wasn't interested. That's really a pity. Although that was what she said, whether it was Noah, Jiu Yuao, or Haruhide Masaaki, none of them showed any pity. This made the expression of Salamandra's members become a bit indescribable. Especially Shadora, although she didn't show anything on the surface, deep in her eyes faintly showed that she didn't know what to do with her feelings. Only Mandela, as if it was a matter of course. Right, continuing to maintain the alliance with No Name will only lower the prestige and reputation of Salamandra. Abandoning the alliance is the right choice. With just one sentence, the originally sinister atmosphere suddenly became even worse. Brother Mandela, Shadora quickly said to Mandela. No matter what, we did unilaterally break the alliance. If we still take it as a matter of course, it's against etiquette. Compared to etiquette, reputation is more important. Mandela didn't allow for any explanation and looked at Noah's group with a sharp gaze. As the leader of Salamandra, one of the rulers of the Northern District, you shouldn't have come into contact with nameless people, let alone invite them to participate in your birth ceremony. Hearing Mandela's words, Jiu Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki's eyes showed traces of anger. Although Jiu Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki weren't people who would care about other people's provocation, if they were provoked again and again, they wouldn't be problem children if they didn't get angry. Only Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Shadora. Birth ceremony. So that's what it is. Originally, Noah had some doubts about Shadora being the leader of Salamandra. After all, with Shadora's age, even if she became the leader of Salamandra, it wouldn't have been long. From the looks of it, Shadora had only become the leader of Salamandra recently. The so-called birth of the fire dragon should be referring to Shadora becoming the leader of Salamandra and becoming one of the rulers of the northern district. It seemed that the fire dragon birth ceremony was a ceremony for Shadora to become the leader of Salamandra and become one of the rulers of the northern district. It was a ceremony to let Shadora become the eyes of the people. But, if this was the case, then another question arose. Since it was the birth ceremony of one of the rulers of the northern district, why would it be held together with the eastern district? Weren't there other rulers of the northern district? Logically speaking, it should be held together with them. That would make sense, right? In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Noah's mind. However, it only lasted for an instant. Mandela, who didn't know the many thoughts that flashed through Noah's mind in a short moment, could only see Noah sizing up Shadora with a scrutinizing gaze with an angry expression. You're just a nobody, you're not allowed to look at Shadora like that. With a furious roar, Mandela suddenly pulled out the long sword at his waist and slashed at Noah's head with a tearing sound. Joyuen Asaka and Kasuga Hikari were shocked. This was because there was no mercy in this sword strike at all. If this attack hit, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. However, Noah looked at the sword that was slashing toward him calmly. His expression did not change at all. Ding! The next moment, a crisp sound rang out. It was the sound of two fingers suddenly pinching the long sword that was slashing towards him, causing it to stop in midair. Mandela's gaze suddenly froze. Noah, who pinched the long sword with two fingers, glanced at the sharp blade that was only 2 centimeters away from his head, then looked up and looked at Mandela. I heard that there aren't many members with outstanding talents in Salamandra, but they rely on the widespread maintenance of the Viper bloodline to increase the strength of the organization. Among them, not only are there pterosaur vipers who dominate the air, but there are also many fire lizards and humanoid fire dragons. Therefore, they have a huge combat power. After saying that, Noah gradually tightened his grip on the long sword with his 2 fingers. In other words, you rely on the human wave tactic, not individual elites. If you want to find trouble, gather all your people first. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's fingers suddenly tightened. Clang! With a crisp sound, the long sword in Mandela's hand was directly broken by Noah's 2 fingers. Mandela, who suddenly lost his target, staggered back 2 steps. Lord Mandela. The members of Salamandra were shocked, then they all showed fierce expressions, pulled out the weapons at their waists, and rushed in the direction of Noah's group. Only then did Shadora realize what was going on. She looked anxious. But there was one person who spoke faster than Shadora. Facing the charging members of Salamandra, Joyuen Fei Niao let out a shout. Stop! The words that carried power turned into ripples and drilled into the bodies of the members of Salamandra, making these people who were much weaker than Jiu Fei Niao involuntarily stop. At this time, Haruhi Biao suddenly stepped forward. Get out of the way. A violent whirlwind shook Haruhi Biao's body. Bang! One by one, the members of Salamandra were sent flying. Chapter 1306. Bang! The violent wind was like a shockwave, with Haruhibu as the center. It exploded in all directions and sent the members of Salamandra who were charging towards Noah flying. Suddenly, The lizard men like fire lizards and dark-skinned people were like large pieces of trash. They were either heavily smashed into the wall or the ground, some even directly hit the furniture in the hall, the luxurious furniture scattered. In less than 10 seconds, more than 20 members of Salamandra were all on the ground, making a series of painful groans. What? Mandela looked around at the members of Salamandra, and then looked at Yuki and Haruhibu. The look in his eyes completely changed. A mere community of no name actually managed to defeat the elite troops of Salamandra in an instant with just 2 people? Elite forces, huh? Yuki looked condescendingly at the members of Salamandra who were lying on the ground and struggling to get up, then showed a very elegant smile. If these are the elites of Salamandra, then no wonder this 5-digit community needs to rely on numbers to make up for it. I feel the same. Haruhibu stepped back and nodded expressionlessly. My rabbit is much more powerful than the dragons and lizards here. That's what he said, but in fact, in terms of strength, Black Rabbit was above Yuki and Haruhibu. If even Yuki and Haruhibu couldn't deal with it, then Salamandra naturally couldn't deal with Black Rabbit, who was a noble of Hakata. So, to be precise, Haruhibu's words weren't wrong. It's just that, in other people's ears, it was quite harsh. You. Mandela showed a violent expression. You guys, seeing this, Shadora finally couldn't stand it anymore. Oniai-san. Shadora was a little angry. If you continue to be rude to my guest, I'll really get angry. What are you talking about? Shadora. Mandela pointed at Noah's group. These people attacked at your birth ceremony and even disrupted the order of the ceremony, so they were brought here. How can you treat these guys as guests? That's enough, Mandela. Byakuya also couldn't help but say. They were invited by me. Isn't it rude for you to hit my guests? In other words, the ruler of the East District is prepared to protect these people? Mandela didn't back down and said this to Byakuya mockingly. Are you becoming more and more disgraceful? You're the strongest ruler of the East District. As his voice fell, a terrifying pressure suddenly spread throughout the entire hall. Under that terrifying pressure, including the members of Salamandra who were struggling to get up from the ground, Shadora, Mandela, Kudo Asaka, and Haruhibe Masaaki all felt their shoulders become heavy, and their bodies became heavy. The only one who could remain calm was Noah. Even so, Noah still looked at Byakuya with a dignified expression. There, Byakuya spread out the paper fan with the flag of the 2 goddesses, covering half of his face, but his eyes were piercing and cold as ice. You keep saying that it's just no name, but you let the elites of Salamandra take action against a no name. After being defeated, you keep on pestering him. Who's the one who's losing more and more of their dignity? Mandela? Mandela's expression changed. However, Byakuya's next words made Mandela's heart sink. Moreover, do you think I'm protecting my guests? Byakuya looked at Mandela coldly. Based on your words, you are no match for them. If this continues, the one who will suffer in the end will only be Salamandra. I only spoke up because I didn't want to embarrass Shadora. Or, Mandela, do you want to smear Shadora's reputation? TSK. Mandela was speechless. Mandela was not a fool. Mandela understood that Noah, Joyu Asuka, and Haruhito Masaaki's group were not easy to deal with. If they continued to pester them, unless they really mobilized all of Salamandra's troops, it would be impossible to do anything to Noah's group. But if that happened, it would inevitably cause chaos in the entire Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. At that time, as the protagonist of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, Shadora would really lose face. And in order to deal with No Name, who didn't even have a flag or a name, mobilizing a large force like this would definitely affect Salamandra's prestige and reputation. It was just like what Byakuya said. If this continued, Salamandra would only be at a disadvantage. Thinking of this, Mandela calmed down. Perhaps to give Mandela a way out, Shadora gave an extremely serious order. This matter ends here, don't cause any more trouble. Yes. Mandela closed his eyes. After a while, he calmly responded. The sinister atmosphere that permeated the air finally eased a little. However, at this time, outside, a person rushed in a panic. Not good. Don't make a ruckus. Mandela looked at the panicking person. What happened? Yes. The person hurriedly said. Someone destroyed the buildings on the street, causing panic on the street. What? Mandela's gaze sharpened. Who did it? There are only 2 of them, the person said. One of them seems to be you 2 of the Hakata nobility. When this sentence spread throughout the hall, Noah, Jo Yuasuke, Haruhito Masaaki, and Byakuya's group all froze and lost their ability to react. About an hour later, No Name walked out of the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. As the leader, Ren looked like he was about to cry and said, "It's only the first day, and everyone has already caused such a big commotion. How are we going to live the rest of the days?" I'm sorry, young Master Ren. Hei-Tu's rabbit ears drooped down, and then looked to the side. When he saw Reverse 16 Knights, Jo Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki's group all looking so heartless, he also looked like he was about to cry. How are we going to live the rest of the days? After Noah, Jo Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki caused a huge explosion in the air and caused a commotion, Reverse 16 Knights and Hei-Tu, who were chasing each other, also destroyed a building, causing panic on the street. Under such circumstances, Mandela, who had finally chosen to back down, exploded in anger, and repeatedly said that he wanted to chase No Name out of the North District. And the 3 problem children were obviously not people who would back down. In the end, both sides left on bad terms. After knowing the whole story, it was not surprising that Renhei, who came later, would have such a reaction. Looking at the dejected Hei-Tu and Ren, and then looking at the heartless Reverse 16 Knights, Jo Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki, Noah smiled bitterly and looked at the operation headquarters behind him. Reverse 16 Knights turned his head and looked at Noah. What's wrong? Nothing. Noah shook his head. I just feel that if this farce ends here, and everything goes smoothly, then it'll be good. Is that so? Reverse 16 Knights suddenly smiled. I'm looking forward to interesting developments. As if to confirm Reverse 16 Knights' words, the sky gradually turned dark, revealing a feeling of a storm. Night fell at this moment. Chapter 1307. After that, Jiu-Yuki and Haruai Buyao claimed that because of Noah, they didn't get to enjoy the festival at all. They stubbornly said that they wanted to continue strolling around the streets. Then, they pulled the black rabbit and disappeared without a trace. Although the black rabbit was following them, Noah was very doubtful about whether the black rabbit could stop the 2 problem children when they were in trouble. He took out the gift card and materialized Letitia. He then caught up with Kyuki Asuke and Kasuga Hibiya. As a result, when the sky turned dark, only Noah, 16 Knights, and Ren, the 3 male compatriots, were left. Looking at the beautiful night sky with some stars, Noah turned his gaze to Ren. So, where are we going now? 16 Knights Reversal also turned his gaze to Ren. Don't tell me you're going to do something as boring as looking for a hotel. Then I might as well go with those young ladies and wander around, okay? That. Ren, you stammered. Actually, before we left Salamandra, Lord White Yiksha told me to go to the Thousand Eyes branch first. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows. Is there a branch of Thousand Eyes here? Yes. Ren nodded. Although in the North District, Thousand Eyes isn't in every outer door like the East District, there is still a branch of Thousand Eyes at the border between the East and North District. Did White Yiksha tell us to go there? Reverse 16 Knights rubbed his chin. After a while, he revealed an eager smile. It seems that something interesting must have happened. It's interesting to you, but not to us. Noah sighed and then asked Ren. Since White Yiksha told us to go there, it must be related to the inside story of why the East District and North District cooperated to hold the festival. If we follow White Yiksha's instructions, we have to get involved in this mess. Ren, you have to think carefully before making a decision. Ren pondered for a while. After a while, he looked up with a serious expression. No matter what, I think it's better to talk to Lord White Yiksha. Maybe it's something beneficial to us. Beneficial? Noah rubbed his temples. But, I think it's more likely to disappoint you. Noah's words made 16 Nights reversal and Ren focus on Noah. Something that disappoints me? Ren hesitated and then said with uncertainty. Mr. Noah, do you already know what Lord White Yiksha is going to say? What? 16 Nights reversal's mouth slightly raised. Could it be that you've made some discoveries as well? Since you said, also, it means that you have also made some discoveries, right? Noah glanced at 16 Nights, who was in reverse. Let me guess, did you think of the same thing as me? For example? 16 Nights reversal did not want to be outdone and showed a provocative smile. The inside story of why the East and North Districts are cooperating to hold the ceremony? So you've noticed it too? Noah scratched his cheek. But, you're right. After seeing the leader of Salamandra and connecting it to the fire dragon's birth ceremony, it's not hard to guess the inside story. Seeing that Noah and 16 Nights reversal were having a conversation that he could not understand, Ren quickly spoke. Mr. Noah, Mr. 16 Nights reversal, did you really find something? Didn't you find it? Young Master Shao Budian. 16 Nights reversal said. Undoubtedly, it's a ceremony for the new ruler of the North Districts to announce his appointment. The other rulers of the North Districts are nowhere to be seen. Instead, the ruler of the East Districts, White Yiksha, came to help the other party hold the birth ceremony. This is enough to explain everything, right? Hearing that, Ren frowned. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and looked up. Could it be that because the other rulers of the North Districts are not cooperating, Shadora has no choice but to seek help from the ruler of the East Districts? To be more precise, not only are the other rulers of the North Districts not cooperating with the birth ceremony of the child named Shadora, but they also seem to be dissatisfied with the fact that Shadora has become the ruler of the North Districts. That's why White Yiksha intervened, right? Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. After all, the new ruler of the North Districts is only an 11-year-old child. It's only natural that others would look down on and be dissatisfied, right? It's fine if it's just disdain and dissatisfaction. 16 Nights reversal shrugged. The worst thing is that the leader of Salamandra is an 11-year-old child. This matter in itself has caused many of the rulers of the other classes in the Northern District to feel enmity towards them. They are preparing to do something during this fire dragon's birth ceremony. Who knows? What? Ren was shocked. In other words, the rulers of the North Districts might attack this place during the fire dragon's birth ceremony? It's unlikely to be an attack. After all, they are rulers of the Order Guardians. It's impossible for them to attack openly. The biggest possibility is that it will involve the political issues between the rulers of the North Districts, right? Noah shook his head. If White Yiksha wants us to get involved in the political issues of the North Districts, then I still think it's best that we don't get involved in this mess. I think so too. 16 Nights reversal raised his hand with a bored expression. It's fine if it's something else, but political disputes are really boring. If it's something like that, I don't want to get involved. Ren fell silent at once, his face full of uncertainty. Noah and 16 Nights reversal didn't speak again. Instead, they quietly waited for the leader of the community to make a decision. Although compared to Ren, be it Noah or 16 Nights reversal, they were more like the center of the community, Ren was still the leader. Therefore, Noah and 16 Nights reversal didn't plan on overstepping their authority and left the decision to Ren. I still think we should listen to what Lord White Yiksha has to say. After an unknown period of time, Ren finally made a decision. Firstly, Lord White Yiksha has taken care of us in the past. It won't be good if we cut off all ties with him. Secondly, even if it involves the political power of the North Districts, if the other party can pay us a reasonable reward, we still have to intervene when it's time. After all, our community doesn't have many choices to choose from. Ren looked at Noah and the 16 Knights of Reversal. Grasping every opportunity to become stronger is what we should be doing right now. That's what I think. Ren's words made Noah and 16 Knights Reversal look at each other and laugh at the same time. Upon seeing this, Ren understood. Noah and 16 Knights Reversal agreed with his decision. North District's 400000 Outer Gate, Thousand Eyes Branch. Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, and Ren were invited into the shop by the shop assistant. As if they were well served, they ate a big meal and soaked in the hot spring. Finally, they each wore a bathrobe and came to the reception room. When Noah and the others came to the reception room, there were 2 other people in the reception room besides White Yiksha. Seeing these 2 people, whether it was Noah or 16 Knights, both of them were slightly stunned, and they stood up in surprise. Ren exclaimed in astonishment. Shadora? Yes. Apart from White Yiksha, there were also Shadora and Mandela. Everyone, we meet again. It was completely different from during the day. At this moment, Shadora's face had an innocent expression that was completely consistent with her age. I hope you don't take what happened during the day to heart. White Yiksha also said this with a serious expression. Actually, there's something we hope to discuss with you. Chapter 1308. Actually, there's something we want to discuss with you. With that said, White Yiksha placed a letter on the table, exposing the contents of the letter to Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, and Ren. The 3 of them subconsciously looked at the letter on the table. There was only one sentence written on the letter. A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony. When this sentence was imprinted in Noah and 16 Knights' eyes, their pupils constricted at the same time. Demon King. A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony? This. Ren's eyes widened, and he started to panic. No. It can't be, right? A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony? Calm down, young Master Tiny. 16 Knights Reversal pressed down on Ren's shoulder, but his gaze turned sharp as he swept his gaze towards White Yiksha. This shouldn't be a joke, right? If anyone uses this kind of joke on me, I'll definitely let them know that they can't make any kind of joke. White Yiksha met 16 Knights' gaze. I think you guys are the same, right? What's going on? Noah asked directly. Is this letter a premonition of a crime? No. This letter is a prophecy made by Thousand Eyes, an officer who has the gift of seeing the future. White Yiksha closed his eyes gently as he fanned himself with the paper fan in his hand. The reliability of the prophecy is almost 100%. At least, it hasn't been wrong so far. So, I have to tell you that this is definitely not a joke. I see, Noah said calmly. So, as the ruler of the strongest class, you came to the North District to hold the festival together with Salamandra? No, I'll help with the birth ceremony this time. The main reason is that the other rulers in the Northern District aren't cooperating with Shadora's birth ceremony at all. As a result, as the ruler of the Eastern District, it's my turn to be the co-host, White Yiksha said in a bitter tone. So, if you're wondering if there's a secret behind why the North and East District will hold the ceremony together, you'll probably be disappointed. It's only because the other rulers in the North District won't cooperate that it's my turn. Noah was instantly speechless. Not to mention Noah, even 16 Knights looked as if she had eaten a fly. Her face was full of bitterness. In the end, he guessed a lot of reasons, but he didn't expect the reason to be so simple. Was this the so-called, being too smart for your own good? However, This way, the reason why White Yiksha sent an invitation letter to No Name was clear. This was because the mission of No Name, which had lost its flag and name, was to defeat the Demon King. It was because of this reason that when Noah exposed the purpose of White Yiksha's invitation in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony, White Yiksha said, "If I can't guess something of this level, then I won't be able to defeat the Demon King, as the mission of the community. In other words, the reason you sent us the invitation letter is to let us take the Demon King's head?" 16 Knights had a ferocious warrior expression on his face. How despicable. Did things become so interesting? Reverse 16 Knights didn't have the slightest bit of interest in political disputes. However, if he played a game of bestowment with the Demon King, it would ignite 16 Knights' fighting spirit more than anything else. The problematic child, who longed to be moved and entertained, let out an aura as if he was looking for an opponent, telling everyone present. At this moment, 16 Knights was in a very good mood. However, 16 Knights' good mood caused the person who was in the worst mood to explode. "If you want to play, then go back to your territory to play," Mandela shouted angrily. "Unlike you nameless people who raise the slogan, 'Down with the Demon King,' as if it's a game, once we lose in front of the Demon King, don't you know what kind of price we will have to pay? You will be destroyed by the Demon King." Ren's expression stiffened slightly, and then became gloomy. Yes. The Demon King's attack wasn't a game. Once they lost in the game with the Demon King, then the tragic situation in No Name's base might happen to Salamandra. Mandela clearly understood this point. When 16 Knights was so excited because of the appearance of the Demon King, it was natural that Mandela would be furious. However, in response to this, 16 Knights looked straight at Mandela with an unruly expression. What? Was the famous Salamandra afraid? When the time comes, just obediently hide behind us and be protected by us. You. What did you say? Mandela was furious, and one of his hands reached for the hilt of the long sword at his waist. Brother Mandela. Shadora was shocked and hurriedly tried to stop him. At this moment, a cold sense of oppression enveloped Mandela. Mandela's hand froze, and his whole body stiffened as if he was touched by something cold. He raised his head abruptly and looked in the direction of the cold sense of oppression. There, Noah looked at Mandela with an unusually calm gaze and said slowly, "Don't worry, Mandela. This time, I won't be merciful. If you're prepared to risk your life, then draw your sword." Mandela only felt suffocated, and his expression turned ugly. One of his hands couldn't move at all, and he couldn't reach for the hilt of the sword that was not far away. "You should give me the same, Mandela." White Yiksha's brows furrowed. "You're the ones who need help. Is this the tone you use to ask for help? We're dealing with the Demon King." Mandela's expression kept changing as he stared at Noah and the others. Can a group of No Name really help us defeat the Demon King? Oh. 16 Knights Reversal grinned with interest. In other words, are you going to test our abilities? I won't stop you, Mandela. White Yiksha glanced at Mandela. But I have to tell you, those two over there, one has a gift that even the so-called omniscient Laplace couldn't identify, and the other has more than 1,000 types of divine armament. If you think there's a way to test their abilities, then I'm looking forward to it. A gift that even Laplace couldn't identify. Mandela's eyes widened. More than 1,000 types of divine armament. Shadora was even more shocked. Impossible. Mandela shouted. Let's not talk about the former for now. How is it possible to have 1,000 types of divine armament? It should be known that divine armament bestowed with divine armament was a mythical item with terrifying power. It was like a godly gun that left the opponent with nowhere to run, a gun that would never miss a single shot Gungnir. It was like the divine spear of victory that, once thrown, would definitely lead the result to victory, the Brahmastra spear. It was like a cursed divine spear that could reverse cause and effect and definitely hit the heart, the spear of piercing death, Gibalg. These terrifying divine armament bestowed with divine armament were terrifying existences that even the three strongest types of boxers couldn't ignore. And these divine armament bestowed with divine armament were almost all in the hands of the highest level Asura gods and Buddhas. The rest of the people only had imitations of divine armament. Those who had the real thing, which one of them wasn't a famous person in boxers? Noah had more than 1,000 types of divine armament bestowed like this. There should be a limit to joking, right? However, this was also the reason why White Yiksha, who was once a two-digit demon king, was so shocked. If he only had one or two, it wouldn't be so shocking. However, if there were more than 1,000 types, that would be too ridiculous. Anyway, I won't believe it. Mandela stared at Noah. Unless you can show it to me. Chapter 1309. Unless you can take it out and show it to me. The moment he said that, the entire space fell into a strange silence. Everyone present turned their gaze to Noah. They did not even dare to blink, worried that they would miss something. This included White Yiksha and 16 knights, who had personally witnessed Noah using the gate of Babylon to project thousands of treasures in the most extravagant way to vent his anger. That was the same for White Yiksha and 16 knights. Among them, Ren even looked at Noah with some anticipation and nervousness. After all, the last time Noah fought Arjul, Ren was unable to rush to the scene before Noah finished off Luos and Arjul because of his leg strength. After that, when he heard that Noah had at least 1,000 types of Godhead bestowment armaments, Ren was like Mandela now. He could not believe it no matter what. Later on, during the month-long community activities, whenever the community encountered some difficulties, Noah was always able to take out items with magical effects to help the community overcome the difficulties. This made Ren gradually become skeptical. Now, it was the time to witness Noah's heritage. Under such circumstances, Noah frowned slightly. He looked up slightly and looked at Mandela without saying a word. What's wrong? Mandela was still staring at Noah. There was no mockery or contempt in his expression. There was only probing. You can't take it out. Can't take it out. It could only be said that this was a joke. Even the hero King Gilgamesh had thousands of prototypes of treasures, let alone Noah who had more treasures than the hero King Gilgamesh. After all, the treasures in the hero King Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon were only prototypes at best. Noah's Gate of Babylon had treasures that could exist in the form of weapons and items. In ancient times, the establishment of various mythological systems was based on reference, so the contents of many mythological systems were basically the same. Under such circumstances, each prototype of treasures would give birth to 2 or 3 types of treasures, which were owned by famous figures in various mythological systems. In this way, all the noble phantoms that could exist in the form of weapons and tools would be stored in Noah's Gate of Babylon. The number of noble phantoms alone had reached tens of thousands. Now, everyone was asking Noah to take out thousands of treasures. It couldn't be any simpler. However, before that, there was one thing that Noah needed to confirm. What about the reward? Noah met Mandela's gaze. If we help you defeat the Demon King, what kind of reward will we get? Hearing this, Mandela was stunned at first and almost subconsciously wanted to scold Noah. That was the Demon King. If it could be defeated so easily, then Mandela would not have needed to lower himself to ask for help at all. Wasn't it too early to talk about the reward now? Mandela, who had these thoughts flash through his mind, immediately dispelled this idea and came up with another one. If the man in front of him really had thousands of divine personas bestowed weapons, then he might really be able to defeat the Demon King. With thousands of divine personas bestowed gifts, Noah would have to be at least a 4-digit level just by relying on those gifts alone. What's more, in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, Noah did not use any of the gifts. He only used 2 fingers to block Mandela's sword and forced Mandela to retreat. It was impossible that he only relied on those powerful divine personas. In this case, with Noah's own strength and the many divine personas bestowed gifts, he would definitely be able to reach the 4-digit level. As long as it was not a 3-digit level existence like the Asura gods and Buddhas in various myths and legends, then defeating the Demon King with 4-digit strength was not a fantasy. So, Mandela was silent for a while. After a while, he looked at Noah. What kind of reward do you want? In other words, he allowed Noah to do as he pleased. Noah's eyes flashed, then he suddenly smiled and turned his gaze to Shadora, the leader of Salamandra. In that case, my condition is that if we help you defeat the Demon King, the ownership of the Demon King will belong to us. No name, huh? Shadora was stunned. The others were also slightly stunned, then they fell silent one after another. Only 16 knights and Ren's eyes lit up slightly. There was no doubt that the Demon King was a natural disaster for the box. However, this also proved that the power of every Demon King was extremely terrifying. Therefore, if they could get a Demon King to join them, it would be a good thing that could only be chanced upon and not sought after. However, in the box, there was such a rule. Once they were able to clear the game held by the Demon King, then the Demon King would forever belong to the community that cracked the game. And if there were more than 2 communities that cracked the game, then the ownership of the Demon King would be negotiated between the participating communities. According to this rule, only one of the 2 communities, No Name, and Salamandra, who were involved in the invading Demon King's gift game, would be able to obtain the ownership of the Demon King. At this moment, Noah was asking Salamandra to give the ownership of the Demon King to No Name. This. Shadora hesitated. There was no other way. For Salamandra, which did not have many elite members, the Demon King joining them was also a very attractive thing. It was not an exaggeration to say that it would be like adding wings to a tiger. Giving away the ownership of a Demon King just like that, no matter who it was something that could not be magnanimous. Shadora was only 11 years old. It was too difficult for Shadora to make such an important decision. As for Mandela, he had something to say, but he was stopped by 16 knights who had been staring at him. Only the leader of the community can make such a decision, right? Suddenly, Mandela was speechless. Looking at Shadora's troubled expression, Noah decided to give her a final push. Clang! At this moment, the entire space was replaced by a dazzling golden light. Everyone who fell into silence was suddenly shocked. When they raised their heads, the scene that appeared in front of everyone's eyes made everyone's eyes tremble. They saw golden ripples that emitted a bright golden light flashing out of the space around Noah like water waves. Inside, an ancient and noble aura, extremely luxurious-looking sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons slowly appeared. Looking at the golden ripples that filled the entire space, as well as the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of weapons emerging from the golden ripples, everyone was in a daze. Except for reverse 16 knights, who didn't know much about the weapons in myths and legends, the rest were all able to distinguish the origins of those weapons. Bestowing a weapon. Ren was in a daze. It's true. All of them are Godhead-level weapons bestowed. How is this possible? Mandela was shocked. How could such a thing really happen? Really? White Yiksha laughed bitterly. Even though I've seen it once, I can't help but be shocked. There are really so many Godhead-level weapons bestowed. Shadora's eyes glowed brightly as she stared at Noah. This person might really be able to help us defeat the Demon King. Looking at the group of people who were looking at the relic in a daze, Noah knew that his intimidation had worked. What do you think? Noah looked straight at Shadora. If this is the case, do you believe that I have the ability to defeat the Demon King and obtain the rights to the Demon King? Shadora nodded her head heavily. Thus, Shadora agreed. Chapter 13:10. After settling the matter of the Demon King's attack, Shadora began to discuss the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony with everyone. They mainly talked about the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. After all, if the Demon King chose to attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, it meant that he wanted to attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Therefore, including Noah, 16 knights, and Byakuya, everyone thought that the Demon King would not attack after the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. The Fire Dragon's birth ceremony would take a few more days. In other words, the Demon King would choose a time in these few days to attack the 4000000 outer sect. In view of this, Salamandra, as the organizer of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, would let the military police increase their vigilance in these few days to not let go of any suspicious places. No Name, on the other hand, would stay by Shadora's side during this period of time to ensure her safety. As one of the leaders of the North District, the possibility of Shadora being targeted by the Demon King was very high. Therefore, not only No Name's group, but even Byakuya would accompany Shadora in public to protect the safety of this young leader of the North District and prevent her from being harmed by the Demon King. Shadora seemed to have some opinions about the fact that everyone put her safety first, but she did not voice it out. Perhaps, Shadora thought that compared to her safety, the 4000000 outer sect needed more protection. Unfortunately, unlike Salamandra, No Name did not have many members. In fact, there were very few members. There were only 4 people, Noah, 16 knights, Joyu, and Haruhide Masaaki. Even if Hei-Tu was included, there were only 5 people. As for Ren, this young leader did not have much combat strength and could not be considered as part of the group. This way, even if Letitia and Aster were included, No Name could only take out 7 people. Using 7 people to protect the safety of the entire 4000000 outer sect? No matter what, it was not realistic. Moreover, the Demon King would attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, so it was very likely that he would attack Shadora. Focusing on protecting Shadora was the most rational thing to do. It was because of this that Shadora didn't raise any objections. She could only acquiesce. The final decision was that during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, as long as they were in public, the people from No Name would accompany Shadora. Tomorrow, there will only be one game of grace that Shadora will host. In the end, Mandela threw out this sentence. I hope that you will all be there. After saying that, Shadora and Mandela once again looked at Noah discreetly. Then, they left the reception hall and returned to the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. Looking at the direction in which Shadora and Mandela left, 16 Knights shrugged as he recalled the gazes they cast at Noah when they left. It seems that the limelight this time has been completely stolen by this little brother. Why? Do you want to be in the limelight? Noah glanced at 16 Knights. Then why didn't you just teach that Mandela guy a lesson? I guarantee that you will be in the limelight more than anything else. Unfortunately, that guy didn't look for trouble with me. 16 Knights curled his lips. If you don't scare him, maybe I will be able to make a move later. Seeing the dangerous smile on the face of 16 Knights, Ren, who clearly knew how troublesome this problem child was, felt his scalp go numb. He quickly opened his mouth. Please, please don't do that. We are now in a cooperative relationship with Salamandra. Don't do anything that will damage our relationship. If you really want to be in the limelight, just take out your grace card and show it to others. White Yiksha said gloatingly. Although it's not as unbelievable as Noah taking out thousands of divine sparks, even Laplace couldn't identify your truth unknown. I guarantee that many people will also find it unbelievable. Then forget it. 16 Knights spread his hands. I want to be in the limelight, not show off. For things like showing off, it's better to wait until I defeat an arrogant opponent and take out the grace card when the other party asks what is your grace card. That's cool and interesting. Hearing this kind of development, everyone could only look at each other in dismay. Then, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, it had to be said that this kind of situation could really happen. It was indeed quite eye-catching. Well, I hope the two of you can be of great use in the war with the Demon King. White Yiksha waved the paper fan in his hand and smiled meaningfully. Although, before that, the Demon King will be dealt with by me, the strongest ruler of the hierarchy. Oh. 16 Knights raised his eyebrows and showed a typical provocative smile. In other words, White Yiksha, you want to compete with me for prey. You're probably the only ones who can treat the Demon King as prey, White Yiksha said helplessly. Although I don't have any thoughts of snatching your prey, I'm still the ruler of the hierarchy. Facing the Demon King is my responsibility. White Yiksha, who said this, didn't consider that he would be defeated. However, this was to be expected, right? As for why, the reason was very simple. Because White Yiksha was the materialization of the celestial law called the heavenly shaking theory. The so-called heavenly shaking theory referred to the geocentric theory. In the heavenly shaking theory, the Earth was the center of the universe and the other planets orbited the Earth. Including the Sun. White Yiksha was the materialization of this heavenly shaking theory. The celestial law that existed before the concept of heaven and earth was born ruled the center of all the views of the universe. However, with the development of human history, the heavenly shaking theory was gradually denied. As the materialization of the celestial law, White Yiksha's spirit kept shrinking. In the end, it was suppressed to the horizon of the White Night, becoming the king of the White Night that would never set or turn dark. Because of this, White Yiksha was one of the star spirits in charge of the sun's operation. He was also the highest existence that could be compared to the highest level of the sun god. At the same time, he had the divine might of the gods and also the royal might of the Demon King. The White Night King, born from these two, was the strongest star spirit and was ranked 10th in the box court. Even though Ling's personality was constantly shrinking and had converted to Buddhism, becoming a Yiksha, a ghost god in charge of water and earth, Ling's personality was once again degraded. As a star spirit and a god, White Yiksha was not someone that any Demon King could do anything to. If one wanted to defeat White Yiksha, one had to be at least a 3-digit level. And if White Yiksha returned the godhood he had obtained after converting to Buddhism and returned to the state of the purest and strongest star spirit, even the 3-digit Asura gods and Buddhas would not be able to do anything to this cheating existence. Considering this point, with White Yiksha around, no matter what kind of opponent came, even if it was a Demon King, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, Noah looked at White Yiksha. I think it's better for you to be careful. This sentence stunned White Yiksha and he frowned. What? Do you think I'll lose to a mere Demon King? No, in terms of combat strength, I'm afraid that an existence that can guarantee that he can defeat you has not appeared until now, right? Noah shook his head. However, almost everyone knows that the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony this time is jointly held by the East and North districts. They also know that you, White Yiksha, will definitely be here. Even so, the Demon King will still attack. This proves that the other party must have prepared a method to deal with you. You'd better be careful. White Yiksha fell silent. After a while, White Yiksha nodded. You're right. It's better for me to be careful. At that moment, the door opened. A shop assistant walked in a flustered manner and bowed in salute. Everyone, your companion, Miss Jiu Yuan Fei Niao, is injured. This sentence made the expressions of Noah and company change. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.